Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel's scientist to God, Spider-Gwen is crazy over me. Chapter 41. Ding. Trigger the task. Study the naughty absorption genes and fuse them into ordinary cells. The task time is half a year. The task completion rewards 50,000 scientific values, and the task failure deducts 30,000 scientific values. The scientific value of the reward for the completion of the task is actually 50,000. It can be seen that the absorption genes this time are slightly different from other genes. Is it much larger? Because the more difficult the scientific research, the more scientific value the reward will have. Yi-Hai is not in a hurry, because he believes in his ability to break through this difficulty. The difference is only a few months. Yi-Hai remembered the lovely face, and was agitated slightly, and said, Xuanvi, notify Xiao Nadi and let her come to the laboratory often. I need to collect her physical data frequently. Yes, in fact, collecting data is on the one hand and experimental research is too boring. He wants to find something interesting in his work. The little naughty and shy look made him very excited, especially the boldness of her before he took away. Amusement caused him to hunt. He would like to be ambiguous with her. After a while, Zhan Nu replied. The owner, Storm Girl, said that the naughty had no reason, and had left the mutant college. The professor found that she appeared at the train station. Wolverine and Laser Eye had gone to look for it. Yi-Hai froze slightly, thinking, is the plot going to start? Should I go and see Wanqi Wang now? He has been fascinating with the ability of the Magneto King. In modern society where the ability to control the magnetic field is iron everywhere, it is definitely a big killer. Most people can't deal with him at all. And Wanqi Wang's life for the mutant career is definitely a mutant revolutionary. He also wants to see such characters. Now that the decision had been made, Yi-Hai immediately set off, and he stepped out of the laboratory, soared into the sky, and flew out like a fighter jet. This time he put on a special uniform designed by the genius beast to help him. It can withstand high temperatures and is tough but soft. The style is the X-Men uniform. So he flew very fast this time, and within a minute of Shilly Road, he reached the sky above the railway station. He floated above the railway station, looking in the crowd. After a while, there was a loud noise, and the top of the train station was shot through by a red laser, and a figure broke through the window and fell on the outside square. The man was shaved, burly, and hit by such a powerful laser, and was unharmed. He still stood up, grinned his teeth, and ran to the living room in a rage. This person Yi-Hai met once, and that saber-toothed tiger with amazing resilience. The saber-toothed tiger rushed quickly towards the waiting hall, and the ground made a bumping noise. It was imposing and fierce. Pedestrians on the road escaped and looked away. Yi-Hai swooped in, caught up with saber-toothed tiger, grabbed his head, and waved it hard. Saber-toothed tiger's huge body flew to the sky, and it flew out more than 100 meters high. I don't know where it is. At this time, two people quickly ran out of the waiting room. One was an old man with a helmet on his head and the other was a thin man. He looked at a large black bag on his shoulder and saw its shape. I knew there was a person inside. These two people should be the Magneto King and Toad. Yi-Hai Mu flashed coldly. His eyes were strong, a red laser flew out, and a loud blast blew a huge pit in front of the two of them. The two magnetic kings both stood in astonishment. They stared at Yi-Hai floating in midair. Yi-Hai's laser eye ability surprised them. You are the brother of Laser Eyes? Wanqi Wang asked curiously. No, my name is Doctor of Science. Yi-Hai Fei landed in front of the two of them. Magneto King, did you catch that poor little girl for your garbage machine? Garbage machine. Wanqi Wang's face became angry. You seem to know my recent research results. Where did you hear about it? You don't care where I heard it from. Yi-Hai waved. I'll tell you, your machine is very defective. Although it can make the X gene from recessive to explicit, but the technique is too rough, it may be necessary to maintain the stability of the gene, and in the end it can only make people collapse. Haven't you done human tests? Quote. Fart, my experiment was very successful. I have successfully transformed several people into mutants. Wanqi Wang proudly said. Yi-Hai suddenly froze. How could this be different from the plot? I couldn't help but say, oh. What is the success rate and what is the mortality rate? I don't believe there will be no casualties. If you want, I can improve this unit with you machine. Oh, Wanqi Wang's face became darker and he looked a lot better. He laughed. Drive Yi, I have heard of you, and I know you are more brilliant in genetic science than I am, and I am usually willing to cooperate with you, but it's too late now, the summit is about to begin, and I don't have time to study with you. Quote. Yi Hai frowned, saying, do you still want to use your machine at the summit? You are too crazy. That will provoke war. You will only make humans completely hate mutants. Wan Shi Wang laughed and said, our war with humans has begun long ago and has never stopped. Humans and mutants are born to be antagonistic. Either humans destroy mutants or mutants replace humans. Dr. Yi, Duent learned Charles with such a weak character. Charles chose to compromise with humans just because he was kind and not the right choice. He was not a qualified mutant leader. Quote. Yi Hai shrugged indifferently, saying, I didn't follow the old path of the professor, and I also feel that when appropriate, our mutants need to show our minions, but Wan Shi Wang, your plan is too far. Then there is no need to talk. Let's see the real tricks. Wan Shi Wang had one in his right hand, and a 2-ton bridge next to it flew over, exhaling and pressing it on Yi Hai's body. Yi Hai just waved his hand, and the car rolled and flew out. Wan Shi Wang was a little stunned, only to remember that the strength of the young man in front of him was extremely changed. He couldn't help him with his strength, so he split his hands and a car not far away broke down and became one by one. The small iron block finally shrank quickly, condensing into small balls, and the dense small were suspended in midair at once. Yi Hai's scalp was numb, and he quickly used the freezing ability, and the surrounding water vapor all gathered, condensing into a transparent crystal ice armor, which wrapped him tightly. Wan Shi Wang smiled slightly, as the general ordered, saying, keep up. The small iron flew out like bullets, and the continued, and Yi Hai's diamond-like ice armor appeared one by one, and finally cracked open, looking at it to be broken. Frozen miles. Suddenly, a huge cold blast exploded, and crystal ice was condensed on the ground around 100 meters, and the two kings of Magnetic and Toad turned into two ice lolly. The high-speed flying seemed to be frozen. Then, one after another fell from the air. The small iron ball fell like rain. Yi Hai flew to the side of Toad like an angel, took the black bag from his back, and gently hugged it in his arms. Buzz. The swirling sound of vortex in the sky came, and several helicopters surrounded Yi Hai with horns. In each helicopter, there were several cold-armed men in military uniforms who opened the doors and carried sniper guns. He fired at Yi Hai. Oh! The bullet pierced the night sky. Yi Hai flashed quickly. Suddenly his left foot was hurt, and he was shot. To make matters worse, he quickly felt a vertigo attack, and his recovery ability also turned into a vertigo. Since, we can see that the opponent's weapons are powerful. Liu Sao turned out to be an anesthesia gun. Yi Hai was furious in his heart, saying, System, open the 4th level of brain domain. Yes. Ding. The host's 4th level brain domain is open. Ding. The host has completed the 4th level of brain domain, and consumes 1000 scientific values. Opening the 4th level brain domain, Yi Hai's brain was sober for a moment, and he became extremely sharp. The cold light in his eyes flickered. For a moment, his figure disappeared. The next moment, he appeared in front of a helicopter and punched him. Broken flying vortex scroll. The swirling squeak made a squealing noise, and the helicopter dropped downwards, banging, and a cloud of fire exploded on the ground. Ah! Run away! The crowd around me finally found something wrong, all screaming in horror, desperately running to the distance. The scene was chaotic. Yi Hai looked at his right palm. He was angry just now. He was injured when he broke the vortex directly with his flesh and blood. He drew cold air and his expression became distorted. Da da da. Several other helicopters started firing again. This time they used real bullets. It is estimated that the anesthesia gun had no effect on Yi Hai just now. Yi Hai flew at a high speed, avoiding each one smartly, like a fast-flying bird, close to a helicopter at once, spraying the crystal cold air in his right hand. This 10-meter-long helicopter ended in an instant, became an ice sculpture, dropped the ground directly from the air, and fell to pieces. On the ground, the X-Weapon Special Forces ran towards Wan Shi King. The two ice sculptures of Wan Shi King and Toad made them curious. They were surrounded by the two and could not start for a while. Suddenly, the small iron around the ice sculpture floated into the air and flew like bullets. The special soldiers around were dressed as sieves, and the blood flow was like a note. Wow! The ice sculpture of Wanxiwang shattered. He shook his wet body and waved his hand backwards. A man running behind him flew out like a cannonball and bumped through several walls one after another, but this person turned out to be no injuries. Naturally able to have this ability is Wolverine. Wolverine stood up angrily and ran out of the train station, but found that Wanxiwang had long disappeared, and Yi-Hai was still raging in the sky. This ability made him very envious. Suddenly Yi-Hai dived and fell to the ground, throwing the naughty in his arms into his arms. You take good care of the naughty, I will tear up all these clutter. Good job, Doctor. Wolverine surprised, you can rest assured that I will take care of her and won't hurt her. Okay, I'm sorry to trouble you. I'll guide you away. Then, he flew into the sky, hitting a helicopter like a shell, and a flame broke out from the helicopter's base, and a missile flew out, flying straight to Yi-Hai. Yi-Hai wasn't afraid, his eyes were frozen, and 2 red lasers radiated out. Only listening to the bang, the missile turned into a beautiful spark, and the bright flame illuminated the darkness around him. X-Weapon Command Center. Seeing that his army had been killed, General Stryker was so distressed that he shouted, "Is there any way to deal with this flying guy?" The assistant smiled bitterly. Most of the weapons we have developed to deal with mutants have been tried, but this guy's constitution is too deformed, we have no way at all. Let's retreat, General. Stryker shouted. Then let's use our mutants. General, it is initially judged that this young man should be level 4, and our mutants cannot deal with him. The assistant looked calmly at Stryker. Retreat, General. Stryker gritted his teeth and finally said helplessly, okay, let's retreat. General Stryker orders the army to retreat. General Stryker orders the army to retreat. The commander kept yelling. The soldiers who heard it were relieved and immediately evacuated each other. Yi-Hai chased him without mercy, killing the X-armed ground and air forces again. A lot. General Stryker gritted his teeth, but was helpless. Until the X-Weapon army was completely submerged in the darkness, Yi-Hai stopped and showed a sneer on his face. He wanted this group to pick up the cheap X-weapons and hit them hard, leaving them afraid to attack the Variant People College. The Mutant Academy is not as simple as the one described in the movie, but there are hundreds of people. If it really fell like the movie, how many young lives would it take to die? Yi-Hai didn't think that General Stryker would show mercy to the mutant children. Unfortunately, I don't know Stryker's nest, otherwise I must kill it, huh? Yi-Hai floated in midair and swept down. Now the whole railway station is in a mess, there are flames and waste car parts everywhere, and there are still many corpses. He knows that this is a big deal, but he doesn't regret it. As he said, mutants should stretch out their minions appropriately, so that those who have bad intentions can see the power and make them dare not act lightly. As for whether the government will trouble him, he is not worried. As long as he shows his powerful ability, people in the government will definitely associate with him, or even stop him. The best example is the Hulk. The Hulk doesn't know how many times it has been destroyed on the Earth, how many people have been killed, and when it finally needs his power, S.H.I.E.L.D. has to be eager to invite him out of the mountain. Yi-Hai's value is definitely higher than the Hulk. I don't say his military value. Take his genetic achievements. He only needs to say that he can help S.H.I.E.L.D. to copy Captain America's Superman Warrior Serum. God, the S.H.I.E.L.D. has to help him wipe the fart. S.H.I.E.L.D. is an organization that monitors superpowers. What happened at the train station was discovered immediately. However, when it was discovered that it was their competitor X-Weapon, Cyclops Nick ordered to ignore it and monitor closely. In the end, they saw the fart X-Weapon was killed by Yi-Hai, and they were all very happy. Someone in this group finally cleared them up. After watching the show, it's time to analyze the results. Deputy Commissioner Maria Hill said, "Secretary, this time Dr. Yi is in a big trouble. Do we still need to cooperate with him?" Nick Shen said, "Look at how valuable he is." Hill, what do you think? Hill said, "He is very powerful, not worse than Magneto King, and he is a multi-powered person. I think we should strive to bring him to our S.H.I.E.L.D. You are mistaken. His value is not in the use of force, but in the study of his genes." Nick laughed. "I know from the inside of the Mutant Academy that Dr. Yi can even repair the defects of the mutant gene. Added a switch to the eyes of the laser eye. After this boy opened his eyes to see the world will not emit the flame of anger. Dr. Yi genetic achievement is incredible. If he used this ability to our Superman warrior, how many good fighters would we make like Captain America? Quote. It shouldn't be so exaggerated. Hill was shocked. Are we thousands of scientists who haven't been able to compare with him alone for decades? Hey, director, you are too high on him. Nick he laughed. You're right, I can't think of things too well. So let's contact Dr. Yi to ask. Okay, Master, Mr. Nick, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., is calling you. Yi Hai, who was floating in the air, suddenly heard the voice of Zhan Nu, and he laughed. I was looking for him, he came, Zhan Nu, connect. Yes, soon Nick's voice came and said, Hello, Dr. Yi, I just saw your wonderful performance. Thank you. Yi Hai smiled easily. Does this mean my trouble is coming? Yes, it's really troublesome, Nick said with a grin. The leader of the X-Weapon, General Stryker, has reported this to Congress. The elders of the Congress have informed me that they will let S.H.I.E.L.D. arrest you. Capture. Quote. Yi Hai was silent for a moment and said, What do you mean, Mr. President and Director? Nick had a smile on his black face, saying, We at S.H.I.E.L.D. have autonomy. If Dr. Yi is willing to join us, I can reject the unreasonable demands of General Stryker on behalf of Mr. President. It's impossible for me to join your S.H.I.E.L.D. I still say that. I can work with you. Don't you want to make Captain America's Superman serum? I can invest in research. You S.H.I.E.L.D. is in the mutant school. The agents here should tell you about my transformation of the laser eye and the electro-optic person, wouldn't I doubt my genetic achievements? Quote. Yes, your knowledge of genes is unparalleled on the planet. I officially invite you to join our S.H.I.E.L.D. study of Superman warriors. Nick politely followed by a laugh. Let that Stryker general go, he has attacked good American citizens for no reason, and he should be sent to military court. Quote. Yeah, now Yi Hai has become a good citizen. Sure enough, interests can resolve all contradictions. After Yi Hai hung up his phone, he went into a night market in New York. Now that the train station has become a closed zone, the police are firmly in control of it, doctors and nurses are running back and forth, desperately rescuing the injured, citizens are watching outside the blockade, and there are injured friends and family it hurts. Yi Hai sneaked into the crowd and walked out slowly. He saw Gwen's father, Mr. George, in these policemen, and he looked worried. The tragedy today is probably enough for him to have a headache. A burly body in the crowd caught his attention. He walked over and asked, Logan, are you here? Little naughty. There is a Phoenix girl beside Logan, and there is a professor sitting in the car next to him, but no mischief is found, which can cause a bad feeling in his heart. Logan said bitterly. I'm sorry, Dr. Yi, I lost my naughty. Ah, Yi Hai quickly asked, what's going on? Logan sighed, clutching messy hair in both hands, and said the Phoenix girl, it's like this, Logan met me who was changed by the witch-shaped girl. He didn't notice it and was taken away by the witch-shaped girl. How is this good? Little naughty falls into the hands of Wanshi Wong, and there will be danger to life. Yi Hai was very worried. Professor, can you sense them? At this time, the gentle voice of the professor in the car came. Sorry, Dr. Yi, I have sensed that Ruiwen got on the plane with a little naughty, they have gone to the east, and they have exceeded our sensing range. However, please rest assured that I will track them at any time with an egg. Quote. The purpose of Wan Magnetic King's grasp of catching the naughty is very obvious, that is, to sacrifice the vitality of the naughty to start the machine he developed. Yi Hai, who originally understood the original, knew that when the leaders of various countries held a summit meeting on Liberty Island, Wanshi Wong would start his machine on the Statue of Liberty. But now it is different. Wanshi Wong already knows that his machine has a low success rate. If he uses this machine at a summit meeting, most of the world's leaders will be killed or injured, which will definitely cause the world to hunt down mutants, not to mention Yi Hai already known about his plan, it will definitely undermine his plan, so at this summit meeting, Wanshi Wong will give up, or act more cautiously. In this way, Yi Hai could not find the whereabouts of the Magneto King through the plot, and rescued the naughty. Yi Hai was in a hurry, so he took out her mobile phone and said, Xuanvi, contact the S.H.I.E.L.D., and let the agents of the S.H.I.E.L.D. help you need the whereabouts of Magneto. Yes, Professor, things are a little troublesome. Yi Hai solemnly. The professor froze slightly and asked, what trouble? Yi Hai said that Wanshi Wong made a mutant machine and finally said, in my estimation, the success rate of this machine is not expected to be high. If he implements his plan at the summit, the heads of states will be killed or injured. It's heavy, so our mutants will have a very difficult situation. Quote. Several professors were frightened, and Wolverine frowned. Since Dr. Yi has already guessed his plan, Wong knows that we will definitely stop it. Should he give up this plan? Wong smiled bitterly. Logan, you don't know Eric. With his character, he knows we will stop it, but he will still give up this plan. Then anxiously, we must meet the school as soon as possible. I need to find the whereabouts of Wong as soon as possible. Quote. Yi Hai and others immediately returned to the mutant college, and as soon as they arrived at the college, the professor directly entered the brainwave enhancement room. The brainwave enhancement room is a huge circular building surrounded by dense virtual display screens, but it flashes the silvery white luster of metal and looks like steel. The controller of the brainwave enhancer is built on a bridge more than 10 meters long, and there is a helmet on the platform, which looks very sci-fi. Yi Hai glanced at the helmet and asked the Phoenix girl, Chin, can you also use this helmet? The Phoenix girl shook her head with regret. I can't do it yet. This helmet is too burdensome for me, and I can't bear it. Yi Hai laughed. This thing should be fun. Phoenix girl Song said. So far, this thing is only known to him by the professor, but every time I look at his uncomfortable expression, it's not a fun thing to wear this helmet. The professor smiled gently. I'm old now, and one day, this helmet will be transferred to your head. The professor used you instead of you. In English, you and you are the same word. The Phoenix girl didn't notice it, but Yi Hai knew what he meant by the professor. The professor said this to Yi Hai. He is very satisfied with Yi Hai's performance now. It is estimated that in the near future, he will agree to hand over his own genes to Yi Hai. As the professor said, he put the helmet on his head, nodded to the Phoenix girl, and held his breath, his face somber. The Phoenix girl understood and pressed the switch of the intensifier. For a moment, the indicator light on the platform lighted up, and the professor's body trembled. His peaceful face shook, as if enduring a lot of pain. The whole space fell into darkness for a moment, then lighted up like the stars in the night sky, shining the whole space, like the galaxy in the universe. Yi Hai took a closer look. The scene here is similar to that described in the movie. The bright stars are blurred human figures, most of them are light white, and some are light red, but these people are huge. It seems so scarce in white human figures. Logan has never seen these strange things. He couldn't help but look around curiously and asked, are these things stars? No, said the Phoenix girl. The bright human figures represent a person on the earth. The white silhouettes are ordinary people, and the red silhouettes are mutants. Is this an instrument used to sense radiation from the human brain? Yi Hai asked. Yes, Dr. Yi. Feng Wong Women's Road. The brain frequency of the mutant is different from that of ordinary people, and professors can use these differences to find designated people. Yi Hai asked, can the professor find the Magneto King? This intensifier was built by the professor and Wong. Wanchi knows this instrument very well. He has a way to avoid it. The professor wants to find Wanchi's men through the strengthener. They use them to find the clues of Wanchi and then these clues traced to Magneto. Quote. This is a good way. Yi Hai nodded, expecting something from the professor. This ability of the professor is unintentionally very powerful. It can be said that it is pervasive. No wonder when Magneto took action, he only brought a few people. He did not want the professor to trace his whereabouts through his younger brother. At this time, the professor seemed to be looking for characters. Those stars began to change constantly, becoming denser and sometimes more sparse. Finally, like a satellite camera, the picture continued to expand and finally fixed on a person. This is just a vague human form. The other person's specific appearance is estimated that only a professor can see it clearly. Yi Hai and others waited and waited. Then the picture began to change again. I saw a personal figure. Sometimes some of them were pale white, some were reddish, and it just changed for more than an hour. Suddenly all the figures disappeared, and the whole space returned to darkness. With a snap, the lights turned on, and the entire space returned to light. The professor took the helmet down with a little tiredness. He rubbed his sore head slightly and said, he has entered the Washington Capitol and disappeared. Does he want to use the machine in the White House? Phoenix Girl wondered. No, Eric is in a hurry. It seems that he wants to play hard with us. The professor said with some tiredness that this time he searched for time, involving a lot of people and distances, and his mental energy was consumed. Wolverine squeezed his fist and said, "Can we ever do them?" Professor. He has a lot of fear for the ability of Wansiwong. His metal body is a toy in front of Wansiwong, and he can't exert any effect at all. We have trump cards here. The professor smiled slightly. He had some knowledge of Yi-Hai's strength. The 4th level variant was very powerful, especially in the case of how capable. The Phoenix Girl groaned. Professor, do you need to tell the government about this? For example, SHIELD. This can suspend the summit or the help of the government. Will it be more advantageous for us to deal with King Magnet? The professor's eyes flickered and he thought for a long time before saying, let's not notify the government for the time being. The Phoenix Girl was shocked and asked, why? Yi-Hai laughed. Chin, have you ever thought about this matter, telling the government that it will only make the government hate mutants even more, and thus make the situation of mutants more and more dangerous? Now anti-mutants are being lifted around the world. Tide, no more oil can be poured on the fire. Quote. Then he grinned and said, moreover, we think in reverse that this matter may not be against us. If we can destroy the conspiracy of King Magnet and save the heads of state and the public will have a view on our mutants. Changed. Quote. The Phoenix Girl nodded and said, what you said makes sense, but can we deal with them? We have a lot of them. They are strong. Yi-Hai was surprised. Isn't your X-Men always holding hands with them? The Phoenix Girl smiled bitterly. This is too much for us. If it was our strength before, we could compete with the Brotherhood of Mutants, but it is not working now. Since the last 10 years, more and more mutants have made trouble. More and more mutants are wanted by the government. Many powerful mutants have joined the Brotherhood of Mutants. Their strength is getting stronger and stronger, and most of our colleges are still children, and there are not many powerful mutants. Quote. That's right, Yi-Hai said. So what powerful man is Wansiwong? Magnetic King established the Brotherhood of Mutants decades ago, and has been absorbing mutants over the years. Now the powerful elite of mutants are mainly saber-toothed tigers, demons, toads, red devil, white queen, crimson witch. There are many new members such as silver, meat, and ball. Although their fighting experience is not as good as the old ones, they cannot be underestimated. Quote. Yi-Hai was suddenly surprised that the red devil and the white queen were dissected by the human government in the movie. Now it seems that this is not the case in reality, and the children of the 2 million magnetic kings of the Crimson Witch and Fast Silver also exist. The plot of the game is a bit messy, and some are like the plot of a manga. The world should never evolve to a manga. There are many mutants in the manga who are extremely perverted. It can be said that it destroys the world, even the universe. If this is the case, Yi-Haike is not confident that he can deal with it. Now he can only open up to level 5. Level 5 is already a level. He can completely smash the mutants in the movie version. The King of Magnets is also like an ant, but the comic version is not enough. Yi-Hai hastily and carefully analyzed the mutants he knew, and finally he was relieved. Most of this world is still a movie world, but the Marvel world is a joint world, not a separate movie, and each other there must be mutual influence between them. Yi-Hai thought about the above in less than a second, and then he groaned, I can get a friend to help. The Phoenix Girl asked, Drive Yi, what kind of friends can you find? Blades. Blade Fighter. Phoenix Girl was slightly surprised. I've heard of him. He seems to be a vampire half-breed. He has a strong fighting ability and is a good helper. Yi-Hai smiled. He is not the same as he was now, and it will definitely surprise you. But the Phoenix Girl was still uneasy. She looked at the professor and let him decide. The professor is the leader of the X-Men, and is very intelligent. He has rarely made mistakes in past experiences. The professor laughed. You all ignored one person, that is, Dr. Yi himself. He is not only a 4th level mutant, but also has many abilities, and he can deal with many people by himself. That's how it is decided. Quote. Okay, since the professor said so, the members of the X-Men have no objection. After the members of the X-Men left, the professor said, Drive Yi, you stay first. I have something to discuss with you. Yi-Hai asked clearly, Professor, do they need to increase their capabilities? The professor hesitated. It is not many days away from the summit. They will be able to increase their combat capabilities and they will not be able to adapt. I would like to ask Dr. Yi to increase their capabilities. You asked me to increase their regenerative power? Yi Hai asked. Yes. The professor apologized. I know that your genetic technology cannot be exposed too early, otherwise it will cause you great trouble, but this time things are too big. We can't lose if we make Magneto successful. Our mutants will be gone forever, and there will even be a disaster. Quote. The professor's face was very painful and worried. It seemed that he did not have much confidence in the X-Men. He agreed with Yi Hai's plan and pinned his hopes on regenerating genes. After the X-Men have regeneration power, they are not afraid of injury, and their combat power increases dramatically. Yi Hai smiled. I can develop regenerative genes for them, but I have a condition. What is it? I want to get the blood of the Phoenix Girl. Yi Hai added, Professor, you know, my risk is high. The professor was silent for a while and said, Yi, you can't manipulate the power of the piano. I know, I just choose some of the abilities of the piano, such as the ability to read and read the mind. Her Phoenix power, before I am not sure, I will not touch. Professor, you can rest assured that I am a very self-disciplined people will not lose themselves for strength. Although the professor was not very willing, in the end Yi Hai relied on a 3-inch tongue to persuade the professor to get the blood of the Phoenix Girl. The superpowers of the Phoenix Girl are mental power, telepathy, and the horrifying Phoenix power. The power of the Phoenix has the power to destroy the world, both mentally and materially, but Chin cannot control this power. When she turns on a power, her other personality will wake up. This personality is full of darkness and desire. Although it can control the power of the Phoenix, it is dominated by desire and disaster to the world. Now Yi Hai's research on genes is very clever. Phoenix Girl's mental ability and telepathy, Yi Hai's self-confidence can be completed within a few days, but he's now faced a difficult problem, that is, his human cells are almost fused with mutant human genes at the limit. He can only incorporate one type of X gene, if more cells will collapse his cells. If he wants to fuse X gene again, he needs to increase his cell strength. For example, the cell of Hulk is very powerful. Light green. This system of giants is estimated to be able to fuse many X genes, of course, if the Hulk cells will reject X genes. Phoenix Girl's mental ability and telepathy, which two abilities are in front of me, which one should I choose? Mind power is an invisible power. Grasping matter like an invisible hand can also form a mindcap to protect yourself, a very practical superpower. And telepathy is also good. It can manipulate other people's consciousness. It seems that considering that the opponents he is facing are mainly Wan Chi Wang himself, and Wan Chi Wang's helmet can isolate the telepathy and has no effect on him, so in the end, Yi Hai chose to integrate mental power. A few days later, Yi Hai successfully obtained the medicine for the delusion gene. Ding! The quality inspection system is on. The fusion degree of Neonly gene agent and ordinary cells is 99.9%. It is recommended for the host. Ding! The host completes the perfect fusion of mental genes and ordinary cells and rewards 15,000 scientific values. After fusing the mind gene, Yi Hai looked at a cup on the table, and the cup flew slightly, then floated to Yi Hai's hand. He has fully grasped the knack for using mental power. No need to adapt. He is now at the 3rd level and doesn't know how much weight he can lift. When the play was on the rise, the door suddenly opened, and the Phoenix Girl came in with a middle-aged man. The man was gray-haired, wearing a pair of glasses, and had a haggard face, without losing a respectable look. This man Yi Hai knew was Mr. Kelly. When Yi Hai saw Dr. Kelly, he burst into tears and smiled. Well, isn't this Mr. Kelly? You, a noble officer, will also come to our mutant college. Why? You came to tear down my college. Mr. Kelly smiled bitterly. He looked at the Phoenix Girl beside him for help. The Phoenix Girl pouted and laughed. That's it, Dr. Yi. Dr. Kelly found out that he has also become a mutant, but can't control his ability, so he asked our professor for help. Yi Hai laughed and looked at Mr. Kelly mockingly, saying, the anti-mutant fighter himself has become a mutant. This world is really amazing. I now start to believe that this world is a god. There is a saying in the East. There is a deity in his head. People are doing heaven and watching. It seems that the gods can't see you anymore, Mr. Kelly. Quote. Miss Chin. This. Kelly had some anger on his face. After all, he was a senior official and could not tolerate the sneer and sarcasm again. The Phoenix girl was very happy. She was seduced by this Kelly member at the meeting last time. She has always been upset with this guy. Now this guy has come to her door. She really wants to find a place to laugh. However, as the host of the college, she could not show disrespect, so she waved like Kelly, and said helplessly, "Drive ye, now Kelly is an important guest of our college and a member of our brother. Please keep talking, be polite." Quote. Okay. Yi-hai shrugged and said, "So, what are you doing to me?" Phoenix Women's Road. Yes, Dr. Yi, Dr. Kelly's cells are very unstable. It seems to be on the verge of collapse. It seems that his X gene is very defective. Oh, Yi-hai smiled. This kind of thing is very common. Many mutants die after awakening and fail. Is there no cure for your college? We have some potions, but Mr. Kelly is special, and we can't do anything about it. Dr. Yi is the best in genetic science, so I would like to ask for help. Okay, no problem. Send me the contents of his medical record. Yi-hai promised, but he was laughing secretly. In fact, Kelly's genetic defect was deliberately made this way, in order to let Kelly ask the mutant college for help, and then control him by treating him. The Phoenix girl quickly sent the medical records. Yi-hai just looked at it and said, "It's very simple. I can make a medicine in a few minutes, but the material for this medicine is a little precious. Mr. Kelly's family is wealthy, shouldn't there be a problem?" Quote. Kelly asked quickly, "How much does a medicament cost?" "It's probably $10,000. There is no problem with this money is trivial to me." Mr. Kelly said lightly. "You need to inject a medicament every day, which means you have to spend $10,000 a day." Yi-hai smiled at Dr. Kelly with a smile. Mr. Kelly stunned for a while. This guy is a blackmailer, and Kelly's face was a little unsightly when he thought of it. Yi-hai smiled and said, "Don't think that I'm lying to you. The reason why I find a solution so quickly is because you have been studying the course for this disease, but our research requires a lot of money. This world which kind of drug, Li Hao, is not a huge sum of money." Quote. Yi-hai is right. Drug companies have to spend a lot of money to develop drugs and then recover the cost. They sell cheaply because there are many customers, but now they are only for Kelly. Of course, the drugs are more expensive. With this in mind, Mr. Kelly's look eased a lot, and finally said helplessly, "Well then, it seems that I will make a fortune for my life. It costs $10,000 a day, more than $300,000 a month, and more than $3 million a year. However, Mr. Kelly has a wealth of money, which is actually nothing to him." He said this, but it was not in vain. Let the other party no longer come to blackmail yourself. Yi-hai's disdain. He has checked this guy long ago. This guy owns a large group, at least billions of family wealth, and many sponsors and partners, and millions are really nothing. He thinks $10,000 a day is too cheap for him, but the other party is a legislator after all, and it's not too offensive to him, so he made a price that couldn't be beat. In fact, his medicine does not cost much, and he can also solve Kelly's genetic disease at one time, but in order to avoid healing his illness and cross the river, he deliberately asked this guy to inject medicine every day, just to remind him, "You can't do without our mutant college. It's best to be honest with me and be in the same camp as us." Kelly also thought about this question and asked tentatively, "Drive Yi, can I make a medicine to solve my problem at once?" Yi Haizhuang's helplessness said, "Sorry, Senator, my business is very busy. I cannot serve you alone. I will develop medicines for you in a busy schedule. You wait patiently. For 2 or 3 years, I think I will be able to develop a potion." Quote. His tone was arrogant, but Kelly believed it, because it was in line with Dr. Yi's speaking style he knew. If he spoke politely, Kelly would think Yi-hai was playing with him. After all, the genetic problem has always been a big problem in the scientific community. Yi-hai said that he can solve his problem in 2 or 3 years, and it is already quite efficient. Thinking of this, Kelly said, "Drive Yi, are you sure you can solve my disease in 2 or 3 years?" "Of course you can." Yi-hai looked at him and said, "Now I am not difficult to modify genes, I have a perfect equation, but the difficulty is the drug research. The development of drugs has always been cautious and cautious. Kelly doesn't want to have problems with his body, right?" Quote. "Yes, that's trouble, Dr. Yi." Mr. Kelly nodded, and was very grateful in his tone. The Phoenix girl saw Yi-Hai flirting with Mr. Kelly so much, she was funny and didn't take it apart, she just looked at it with a smile. Bgeh. Mr. Kelly, I will make your potion and send it to your house. Now that I have something, I won't entertain you. Yi-Hai began to order guests. Kelly hurriedly said, okay, goodbye. After Kelly left, the Phoenix girl asked, Drive Yi, what skills have you transplanted to me? It seems that the professor has told you something about me. Yi-Hai smiled, I have transplanted your mind. I have not been able to transplant other abilities because my cells are not strong enough to be fused. Your cell strength is already strong enough, but you have fused so many X genes, I am really worried that your body will collapse that day. Phoenix girl was a little speechless. Yi-Hai pointed to his own brain and said, I believe in my own wisdom. My brain tells me that it won't break, then it won't break. The Phoenix girl rolled her eyes and said, I hope so. Then her eyes bloomed with hope, looking at Yi-Hai and asking, Yi, can you solve my problem? Well, my Phoenix problem. Yi-Hai apologized. Sorry, Chin, your question is not genetic, but soul level. Now I know nothing about the soul, so I can do nothing about your Black Phoenix, but I will gradually study this field. Yes, do you remember that blood god? The blood is the soul of ancient vampires. As long as I catch him, I can study the soul problem. Quote. Okay, call me whenever you need help. Phoenix girl said. The problem of Phoenix has always troubled her. She was both afraid and eager for the power of Phoenix. She longed for one day to be able to fully grasp her own power, but she and the professor were powerless. Now Yi-Hai has demonstrated extraordinary wisdom, so she will hope is on Yi-Hai. In an unknown cave, the devil-shaped woman had a dispute with a woman. This woman is blonde, slender, and fascinating. She combines the beauty of the East and the West, and is a peerless thing. This woman is the Queen of White, a powerful underling of the Magneto King. The golem chanted, Emma, now we use 3 machine-made mutants. One of them is dead, and the other 2 are still weak. This shows that the machine we have made is defective. Stop this plan, otherwise it will be a terrible disaster. Would you like to see the entire New Yorker and peak people from all countries die? Quote. White Queen said indifferently, you and me said that this is useless. This is the decision of our boss Wanchi Wong. He feels that he carefully controls the machine and there will be no problems. Of course, there are failures. Quote. It's too hasty. The experiment wasn't completely successful. How can we take so many people's lives to conduct experiments? This is a grasshopper's life. The devil girl was so anxious that she knew that she could not persuade the Magneto. Now Magneto relied more on the courageous and motivated White Queen, so she wanted to persuade the White Queen to put pressure on the Magneto together, but she apparently ignored the White Queen's impact on humans. Hatred. Queen Bai had a period of being caught by human beings as a test product. This experience made her have no feelings about human beings. She became extremely hostile to human beings. Such people are not uncommon under the King of Magneto. Queen White said coldly, for decades, human beings have experimented with our mutants. They have never cared about whether we will die. Why should we care about their lives? It is better that they die. The demonic girl cried, but that would make humans more hate us mutants. Isn't it better? Let humans continue to persecute mutants. The more the mutants are harmed, the more they will work together, so that our power will be stronger. Hakuba haha laughed Road. Suddenly she found that she wanted to persuade the woman in front of her, but she was delusional, and her painful experience made her completely indifferent to human life. You are all crazy. The demon-shaped girl went away, and she did not try to persuade the Magneto King. Based on her understanding of Eric, Magneto would never shake his will. Like the White Queen, the Magneto is now very extreme and very extreme. Hatred of humanity, and the ideals of their youth go further and further, now only ambitious and cold. The witch woman is full of bewilderment about the future of mutants. She is very disappointed with Magneto. She also disapproves of Professor X's blind compromise with human beings. She doesn't know what path to take. She doesn't have the courage and ability to open another path. She wanted to find another leader. If she couldn't find her, she was going to retreat, and then she was alone. Anyway, I must stop this crazy operation. I have to go to Charles. Momo women thought. For the witch girl, it is very simple to leave the monitoring of Wansiwang. She can be transformed into the image of anyone. She changed the shape and easily dropped the surveillance. Then she flew to New York by plane and met Charles. Say the crazy magnetic plan of Wanwang. To her surprise, Professor X's face was calm. He just said lightly, "It seems that Dr. Yi was right, Eric's machine can only make failed products." "Did you already know?" The witch girl was surprised. "Yes, Ruiwen." The professor smiled slightly. Drive Yi analyzed that the machine invented by Eric was flawed. If it was used at the summit, it would be a massacre. "Yes, you were right. What should we do, Charles?" "Our original plan was to stop Eric's atrocities at the summit, but now with you, we have a better way." "Oh, what better way?" Witch girl asked quickly. "I want you to take us to Wanchi Wang's nest and get rid of that machine," said the professor. The Phoenix girl wanted to stop talking, not to destroy the conspiracy of Wanchi King at the summit meeting, and then let the people around the world see that mutants also have good and evil. Why do they change their plans now? When she was about to speak, the voice of a professor appeared in her mind. "Chin, don't tell us our plan now, we need the witch girl to be on our side." The Phoenix girl froze slightly, not understanding what the professor meant, but she was very obedient and said nothing. "This is a good idea." The demon-shaped woman agreed with the professor's method, so that you do not need to take risks at the summit. After all, the King of Magnets is very powerful, and the X-Men terror is not their opponent. "Okay, let's plan to bring someone over, but for the sake of safety and security, I can't bring too many people," said the witch girl. The professor nodded slightly to Yi Hai, and Yi Hai smiled clearly in his heart and said, "I'll do it alone." "You." The demonic girl looked at Yi Hai in doubt, and said, "Drive Yi, although you are strong, it is because of your strength that the Magneto pays more attention to you. I am afraid you will not be able to enter the base of Magneto." Quote, "It's not difficult for me because I also have the ability to deform." Yi Hai smiled slightly, then her face changed, and she became a mature middle-aged person. Her body also swelled up and became a burly man. The Phoenix girl looked at him in shock and said, "How did you do it? I feel that this is not your ability to deform." Yi Hai smiled. "It is indeed not a deformed gene, but it is the use of mental power to control the muscle contraction of the body to change the shape. It is so simple. You can also do this ability. If you are willing to learn, I can teach you." Quote. Really, everyone was shocked. They were extremely capable. Wolverine said, "I want to learn this skill so that I don't have to be afraid of X weapons, and I won't find it when I go out to play." Laser nodded and said, "This ability is good, but Dr. Yi, do you really think we can learn?" Yi Hai laughed. "I don't know if you can learn it. I just said that my ability is to control the physical muscles and physical muscles to change the shape, and each mutant has mental power, so theoretically speaking each mutant can change his muscle shape, but how much can be changed, whether it is proficient depends on personal effort and talent. This is not difficult for me, but for you, it will be difficult. You and me are different, yes, because I am a genius." Quote. Everyone lost hope instantly. Indeed, as he said, this stinking guy is a genius, and what he can easily do, they ordinary people may not be able to do. That would be great. It would be enough to have Dr. Yi alone. The devil girl rejoiced. "That's good." Yi Hai smiled at the witch-shaped woman. "Well, beautiful lady, I wish us a happy cooperation." After a few people analyzed the strategy, the X-Men's men set off. They flew the Blackbird and flew to the Washington Capitol. This time the X-Men are basically all set off. They are here to cover Yi Hai and the Demon Witch. Whenever there is a situation, they respond. The Blackbird plane was very fast, but arrived in Washington in half an hour. They hid the plane in a wood and then followed the witch-shaped woman through the wood and entered a valley. The witch-shaped woman pointed at a distant hill and said, "Have you seen that hill? This seemingly ordinary hill is actually an appearance. It is essentially an illusion made by Wanchi Wang using magnetic field equipment. Come to confuse outsiders. Come with me. Don't be nervous, those guards won't treat us like this. We need to guard against the old blonde woman who can read." The blonde old woman, she said, was a white queen. Yi Hai followed the devil-shaped woman toward the mountain and walked to the vicinity. The hill was still a hill. A cave appeared halfway up the mountain. There were guards, saber-toothed tigers and several other mutants outside the cave. The saber-toothed tiger seemed to have a very sensitive nose. He pumped into the air. then looked at Yi-hai with black eyes, walked over quickly, and said, I seem to have smelled your smell. Yi-hai said in a middle-aged tone, Of course, we have met a few times. Saber-toothed tiger stared at Yi-hai in doubt, and said, Why don't I remember you? I'm a weak mutant. You are a big man, and of course you won't remember it. Yi-hai smiled slightly. What are you doing here? Asked Saber-toothed tiger. The witch-shaped woman said, Saber-toothed tiger, I brought him to do something, don't you believe me? The saber-toothed tiger looked at the 533, and looked at the demon-shaped girl, and nodded, Okay, you can go in. Yi-hai smiled slightly and followed the witch-shaped girl into the cave. The tunnel inside the cave was long and there were metal buildings everywhere. At a glance, it was clear that Wanxiwang must have used magnetic field control. Magneto King is very powerful in controlling the magnetic field. He can manipulate steel to create a house in a few minutes, so it doesn't take much time for him to build such a base. There are not many mutants in the base. The devil girl told Yi-hai that in order to prevent the professor from discovering his plan through the brain waves of his subordinates, this time all the elites were brought, and the White Queen also had a soul. The ability she can shield the professor's mind from searching. The witch-shaped woman took Yi-hai and the two through heavy shackles and came out of a room. There were several mutants patrolling the outside. One tall woman was very conspicuous. She had long red hair and was wearing a red coat, wrapped in a black dress and red crystal high heels, like a red princess. When the magical girl saw Yi-hai notice the girl, she whispered, That girl is the Scarlet Witch Wanda Maximoff, the daughter of the King of Magnetism, nicknamed the Scarlet Witch. She is good at using dull magic. It is very powerful. We must be careful. Yi-hai nodded slightly and said, Is the room in front our destination? That mutant machine is inside, said the witch girl. We have to find a way to rush in. Can't cheat in. No, only Magneto can enter. You can become the Magneto King. I can't. You see that iron door, it's an iron door without a key, and it can only be opened by the magnetic control ability of Wanxiwang. I don't have this ability and it's useless to look like him. Devil-shaped woman helplessly said. So, what if I become the Magneto King? Yi-hai smiled slightly, his body was undulating, and then a middle-aged man appeared, wearing a helmet on his head, a black suit, and a red cloak. This. The devil girl stared at Yi-hai with wide eyes. What's going on? How can you transform? I'm a multi-powered person, Yi-hai said in the accent of Wanxiwang. Now you should understand why the professor would allow me to come alone. You are such a freak. I think I know what your abilities are. You must be similar to that child girl's ability. You can also absorb the superpowers of outsiders like her, but she loses her ability after leaving contact, but you can last. Witch-shaped woman guessed. Yi-hai hesitated for a moment. This was a good excuse to give himself more ability, so he nodded. You were right, my ability is to copy the superpower of others, but not through contact with naughty, I need get blood. Quote. It's a really good ability. The devil girl nodded slightly and looked at Yi-hai with bright eyes. Your ability is very powerful. You remind me of the apocalypse we encountered decades ago. Apocalypse can be obtained by transferring consciousness. Superpowers. He has gathered a lot of very useful abilities in this way. I believe that you can also gather a lot of abilities in the future. Quote. Yi-hai smiled bitterly. My copying ability is not so simple and has a lot of restrictions. Let's not talk about this first, let's go over first. I don't want the devil girl but shook her head and said, I am afraid not, you don't have the magnetic control ability of Wanchi King. Yes, Yi-hai felt helpless, but I have the mental ability of a phoenix girl. Should I be able to open that door? The witch-shaped woman frowned. That door is nearly 10 tons in weight, can you open it? You can't break the iron door with your mind, then they will find something abnormal. Yi-hai smiled. It weighs 10 tons. This is no problem. All right, let's go. The two stepped around the corner and walked forward. The mutants immediately saw Yi-hai and both of them bowed and saluted. Boss. Yi-hai just nodded solemnly, and then looked at the iron gate. When he thought about it, a huge amount of thought was sent out. As if there was an invisible hand in the space, he moved the heavy iron gate away. The iron door opened suddenly, and the mouth of the demon-shaped woman drew her lips, thinking, another perverted man like Eric. Yi-hai smiled slightly at her, then the two went in. The inside is all cast of steel, and each wall looks heavy. The space inside is not very large, but it is very empty, but there is no such machine as the witch girl said. Isn't that machine here? Exclaimed the witch-shaped woman. Not good, we're in trouble. Ha ha. One person laughed and said, you just realized that it's too late, Dr. Yi. Welcome to the iron cage I made for you. During the conversation, many people came in, including Wanqi Wang, Scarlet Witch, White Queen, and some other mutants. These people sneered, or mocked, at Yi Hai. Eric, it turns out you knew I would go to Charles. So I made it here intentionally, the demonic girl cried. You're right, but what I didn't expect was that I would be so lucky to catch a big fish. Wan Magnetic Wang glanced proudly at Yi Hai. Drive Yi, I didn't expect it to be you. Welcome to my cage. Quote. Yi Hai was panicked and disdained. Wang, how could your strategy be concealed from me and the professor? In fact, the devil can safely come to the mutant college, we know that this is what you used to fish trap. The crowd looked at Yi Hai in surprise, but these people did not believe his words, thinking that he was just a mischief of others, consciously very shameless, and just said a few words of the scene. In their understanding, Yi Hai people who have always been arrogant and clever, this kind of person has the best face. Wanqi Wang mocked. You know it's a treacherous plan, and you dare to come from throw. Do you feel confident that you can defeat so many of us? Yi Hai smiled and said, seriously, I didn't really take your eyes off. Although I may not defeat you, but I want to run away, you can't stop me. The Scarlet Witch chuckled and said, don't hesitate, what are you capable of escaping from this cage? This is because all the rooms are made of alloy, and a special magnetic field is distributed. The person in your college who can penetrate the wall cannot come out. Quote. It seems that you are really fully prepared. But obviously it is not enough. After Yi Haigang finished speaking, he suddenly pointed at the iron wall, and the iron wall quickly sunken in. A large hole several meters deep appeared, the structure was damaged, and the original electromagnetic effect suddenly broke. Everyone looked at each other. This alloy is very strong, no one here has the power to punch out even a trace of the alloy, except for Magneto King, but Yi Hai made a big hole easily. Yi Hai smiled, it looks like your iron wall is quite thick. I hit 2 meters deep, but I haven't seen it yet. I'll do it again. Quote. Saying that he was pointing again, an invisible force rushed out, and finally broke through the wall. The Scarlet Witch frowned. What is your ability? I feel like mental power, but mental power cannot be so destructive. Yi Hai clapped her hands and laughed, this lady has great eyesight. Actually it is mind power. I'm not like Phoenix Girl. I just use mind power to float things or make a mind guard. I just discovered a new way to play mind power. That's it. Quote. Wan Magnetic Wang smiled. Drive Yi is not a strong scientist. I take back what I said just now. You want to leave. We can't stop you, but what about her? Wanqi Wang pointed at the witch girl and said, I think you want to take her away. Isn't that easy? Yi Hai shuddered for a moment, surprised. Wang, she's still following you for so many years. Are you trying to kill her? Wanqi Wang said coldly. Sorry, she is not my subordinate now, and I will not show mercy to those who betray me. The golem trembled and said, Eric, you have completely changed. Now you can ignore your friend's life for the sake of rights and desires. You're not my friend, devil girl. Wanqi Wang's tone was cold, and a spirit of killing pervaded the audience. The audience was tense and ready to attack. Yi Haidao. Wan Magnetic King, aren't you curious? I know why you should come to trap you. The Scarlet Girl giggled. So, are you really from Throw the Net? Yes. Yi Hai looked at this fascinating stunner, with admiration in his eyes. Then what is your purpose? My purpose is to help you perfect your equipment. Yi Hai smiled. The crowd looked at each other again and couldn't figure out what he was doing. This guy didn't seem to have any stand. Wanqi Wang closed his eyes and said, Young man, I know there are many achievements in genes, but I told you that no matter how powerful you are, you have no time to improve. Yi Hai nodded his head and said, Magneto King, I have many abilities, but the most outstanding ability is my head. My head is hundreds of times smarter than you, thousands of times. I can help you improve your equipment. That's what the professor meant. You don't believe me, you should trust the professor, right? Quote. Wan Magnetic King's gloomy face finally smiled, saying, I understand your plan. You help me to perfect the mutant machine, and then fight with us at the summit meeting. No matter what the final win or lose, it will not cause great casualties. It also showed the public that there are good and bad mutants, not all of them are terrorists. Oh, this is in line with Charles's style. Quote. Everyone suddenly realized that looking at Yi-Hai was extremely complicated. They all wondered if this man could really perfect the machine. The devil-like woman had a messy feeling. She went to tell the truth regardless of her life, and took Yi-Hai to destroy the machine, but the other side told her that he actually came to help perfect the machine. Is there any such fun? The honest man Charles can also play tricks. The demonic girl looked at Yi-Hai and thought, wouldn't it be the idea of this little devil? Look at his treacherous look, you know that there is a belly in it bad water. Quote. So you can be so confident and perfect? Wanqi Wang asked everyone's thoughts. It's been a few days since the summit. Young people, you still don't know anything about that machine. Then, let's not waste time. Yi-Hai Song relaxed. Wan Magnetic Wang Weiner laughed and said, very well, I will trust you once. You should believe your old friend Professor X. Yi-Hai thought to himself. Yi-Hai followed Wanqi Wang and others out of the iron cage and came to a nearby room. The space here is large, and there are many instruments and equipment. The metal instrument is placed in the center, which is connected to many wires. The flash of light, the arc was still spinning rapidly, and a wave of magnetic field erupted, which seemed to slightly change the cell structure of the human body. I need the information of this machine, Yi-Hai said to Wan Magnetic King. It's in that computer. There is an icon on the desktop, just click on it. Wanqi Wang pointed to the computer on an iron table and said. Okay. Yi-Hai walked quickly, the computer was on, and he opened the file and looked up. There are about a dozen Gs in this machine's data, which involves a lot of aspects, but it is mainly about magnetic fields and genes. The knowledge of magnetic fields is the field that Wanqi Wang is proficient in, so there is not much written on it, and Wanqi Wang on genes not very understanding. There are many materials, and there are other scientists' research materials, and even Yi-Hai also saw his own scientific research materials, which took up a lot of space. It can be seen that Wanqi Wang referenced a lot of science in order to manufacture this machine, data. If it was someone else, so few introductions on the magnetic field would be at a loss, but when Yi-Hai came, he had already prepared for it, and Wan Magnetic King said vaguely that he would not be troubled. It took him more than 10 minutes to read the data, and then formulas in his mind were composed quickly, just like complex chemical reactions. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the genetic transformation of the mutant human machine. The task is completed, and 20,000 points are awarded. This is 5 days later and the last day. The summit will be held on Liberty Island tonight. Yi-Hai shook his tired head and said, Wanqi Wang, the genetically modified part of the mutant human machine has been perfected. In the future, you will not have any human life problems when using this machine, but I cannot solve the energy problem of the machine. This topic involves the issue of vitality, and I still have no way to start. Quote. Wanqi Wang smiled softly. So I still need a little naughty to turn on this machine. This is not possible. Xiao Naughty is a student of our college, we will be responsible for her, I need to take her away. Your energy problems, I can think of another way. Yi-Hai looked at Wanqi Wang's eyes, there was anger and murder. Wanqi Wang said momentarily, no problem, as long as you give me the technology to transplant the X gene. What? Yi-Hai was startled, but she quickly made a surprised expression on her face, and looked at Wanqi Wang suspiciously. Magneto Wang, do you think I have mastered the technology of transplanting the X gene? I think you are too uplifted, am I right? Quote. Wanqi Wang smiled and said, Drive Yi, you don't have to quibble, you have this ability. Do you know why I found this? Seeing Yi-Hai didn't answer, he continued, in fact, the very simple question is your ability, the laser ability of the laser eye, the freezing ability of the Iceman, and the self-healing of Wolverine, the transformation of the devil-shaped woman ability, Phoenix Girl's mental power, these 5 abilities are all concentrated on you. Quote. Yi-Hai interrupted. This is my ability, I can copy the ability of others. Yes, you can tell others that your ability is the ability to copy others. If it was before, I would believe you, but these days, your perfection of this machine has made me see that you are in the gene's incredible results, although many I can't understand, but I understand that you are fully capable of stimulating the X gene of ordinary people, so it is not difficult for you to transplant the X gene to yourself, right? Magneto King looking at Yi-Hai with a smile, he said, what? You still want to deny it? Yi-Hai smiled slightly bitterly, and sure enough, his secret is becoming more and more difficult to conceal. As his genetic achievements become more and more people doubt him. What he can do now is delay as much as possible. In order to have the ability to protect himself after being fully exposed in the future, Yi-Hai is even more eager to cultivate his own power. Yi-Hai was a little upset and a little dazed. It seems you are acquiescent. Wan Shi Wang laughed again. Let's make a deal, Dr. Yi, you give me your genetic technology, I'm a little naughty. How? You are a threat, not a transaction. Yi-Hai shook his head. Whatever you want to say. Wan Shi Wang laughed. Drive Yi, don't you want to transfer your own risk? You are now a treasure, your technology, I don't know how many organizations and countries want it, if you give me this technology and I can make it public. This is what I researched. Those black hands will reach out to me. I don't care. Quote. Yi-Hai interrupted him. Do you want to rely on this technology to collect mutant capabilities? Like Apocalypse? Yes, I want to do this. If I can gather the capabilities of mutants all over the world, I will be a god. Under my leadership, the mutants will rule the entire human race. Wan Shi Wang denied his ambition at all. Is your ideal of rebellion so simple? Is it always boring and tired to dream of dominating the world so much? Yi-Hai mocked. Wan Shi Wang frowned slightly and asked, what is your ideal? I won't conquer the world. Don't try to conquer me. I will have great power, but I won't provoke others. Don't try to provoke me. If I provoke me, I will let him know my anger and destruction. Yi-Hai said. Wan Shi Wang looked at Yi-Hai with pity, and he laughed. You and my young thought are the same. At that time, I didn't want to provoke others. I just wanted to live a good life with my own superpowers, but the reality is always so cruel. Many people will never let me be healthy. They are always so interested in my abilities. They can't deal with me, they start with my family and friends, hoping to threaten me. I will try these delusions again and again. People are destroyed, but there will always be a wave of people. They are like weeds that have been cut off and will grow up. The trouble is always constant. Quote. He mocked and looked at Yi-Hai. Yi-Hai, your thoughts are as childish as when I was young. You keep this idea to get Li Jiao like this. Waiting for your friend to be hurt will make you regret for life. Yi-Hai shuddered in his heart and remained silent for a long time, saying, you were right, I should have the ability to handle troubles, and I am not difficult, I can make a lot of men. Do you want to create a mutant army? Wan Shi Wang clapped and laughed. Excellent, we can cooperate. Okay, Yi-Hai nodded slightly. We can cooperate, but I don't want to be infected with your notoriety. And you must give me a little naughty. No problem. Wan Shi Wang laughed. But you have to give me some mutant gene technology. Yi-Hai looked at King Magnet and said, we can only trade potions. Don't think about lions opening your mouth. And transplanting mutant human genes is not so simple. I just have mastered laser eyes, flight, regenerative ability, mental ability, deformation ability, freezing ability, etc. Quote. A fiery, hot light erupted in Wan Shi Wang's eyes, saying, it's pretty good. What do you want? Regeneration ability. Wan Shi Wang said without hesitation. This is what everyone wants. Yi-Hai said, I can only give you one kind of medicine. For you, transplanting multiple X genes is not a good thing. It will degrade you. Wan Shi Wang nodded slightly. I understand this, so I'm curious, if you transplant yourself so many abilities, aren't you afraid of downgrading? Yi-Hai nodded his head, contented himself, the reason is very simple. My mental strength is very large, and I can bear multiple X genes. Wang stared at Yi-Hai, and wanted to see the flaws in Yi-Hai's expression, but after a long time, he didn't see anything. He turned his mind to electricity, analyzed it for a long time, and found nothing wrong with what Yi-Hai said, means that Yi-Hai did not lie. In fact, Yi-Hai did not lie. He was able to bear so many X genes because his head was special and his mental strength was extremely strong. On the one hand, the other side had systematic help. Wanxiwang, I hope my secret is only known to you in your organization. Yi Hai looked at Wanxiwang seriously. Wanxiwang didn't hesitate and immediately nodded. No problem, but your secrets are not likely to be hidden for a long time. You must know that there are many intelligent people in this world, most of whom are unscrupulous. As long as they have a little doubt, put it into action. So, Dr. Yi, your troubles will grow in the future. Quote. These people also include you, Wanxiwang. Yi Hai said rudely. No, Wanxiwang shook his head and said, Drive Yi, you are different from ordinary people. You are one of our mutant brothers, and Charles is also a fancy person. I will not use the means to you. In the future, if I need it, I will trade with you. Quote. Yi Hai was suddenly surprised and flashed some actions of Wanxiwang in his head. He found that he was cruel and ruthless to humans, but he was really good to his own people, and basically he would not kill innocent mutants. This is why so many mutants are willing to follow his reason, which is also a charm of him as a mutant leader. Yi Hai nodded. Very well, we can cooperate in the future. I'm going to take the naughty home now. The little girl has stayed here for so many days. It is probably terrified. Wanxiwang took Yi Hai to a small room with only a toilet and a bed, and the naughty curled up on the bed like a desperate prisoner. Seeing Yi Hai appear, little naughty widened his eyes almost unbelievably, and looked at him for a long time before he asked, Do you Dr. Yi? Yi Hai nodded sympathetically to him and said, I am, I brought you home. The naughty was suddenly surprised, but when he saw Wanxiwang, he jumped into the corner like a frightened bird and screamed, You are not Dr. Yi, you must be the ugly woman with blue scale armor. Any more conspiracy, get out of me. Quote. She was screaming hysterically, with a frantic and terrified expression. Yi Hai looked angrily at Wanxiwang. What did this guy do to this poor little girl that made her so scared? Wan Magnetic Wang Songsong said, We just closed her in this narrow room, BGFI never went out. Is it a dark room? Yi Hai has learned something. Human beings are closed in a closed space, and it is easy to collapse over time. It is said that even a person with strong willpower can't stand it, let alone a naughty 15-year-old girl. Yi Hai floated his hand slightly, and the little naughty floated and flew to Yi Hai's side. He softly said, You see, the devil girl doesn't have this ability. Little naughty was a little cramped, but her tension was relieved a little, and she nodded slightly, maybe. Her moody ups and downs. Her hysterical scream just vented her fears, and now she seems to be fearless again. She didn't trust Yi Hai, but it didn't matter. She thought she was dead. If only it was Dr. Yi. Xiao Naughty thought to herself. She heard that Dr. Yi was very powerful, and she should be able to defeat the great demon, Magneto King, like a hero in a fairy tale. No, she's in this remote cave. I don't know if Dr. Yi will miss me after I die. Xiaonian thought bitterly, then the crystal tears flowed down and wet Yi Hai's clothes. Yi Hai hugged her naughty and smiled softly. What's wrong, are you happy? Or afraid? Xiao Naughty suddenly found that she was being held by Yi Hai, and the two of them were still flying in the sky. She said, Aren't you a magical woman? Yi Hai reluctantly said, I am indeed not a demon-shaped woman. The demon-shaped woman is an old mutant. Have you heard that she can fly? No, indeed. No matter how little Naughty recalled, he hadn't found any records of the witch girl flying, which means that this Yi Hai was real. A moment of joy filled her heart, her face was sour red, and a little dazed, she exclaimed happily, Are you really Dr. Yi? Are you my knight? Yes, I am Dr. Yi, my princess, your loyal knight has defeated the dragon, to save you home. For a moment, a feeling of happiness filled her atrium. She wanted to cry a lot, and then told Yi Hai about the painful experiences she had gone through these days, but the tense spirit was relaxed, and a tiring moment came. Her eyelids kept fighting, and after just saying thank you, she fell asleep with her eyes closed. What a poor child. Yi Hai touched her hair gently, he touched her skin, and did not make any changes. With systematic shielding, she could not absorb Yi Hai's ability. Yi Hai flew at a high speed in the sky, and soon reached the sky above the Mutant Academy and landed behind the school. X-Men's Storm Girl ran out. I am afraid that this teacher is most concerned about this little girl in the college. Stormgirl looked at Naughty and asked, How is she? Quote. It should be fine, she fell asleep. Yi Hai held her Naughty tightly in her dorm room. Many students watched curiously along the way, but most of them did not make a caring move. It seems that as the Phoenix girl said, this little girl was in college. There are no friends here. A boy ran in. He was a handsome boy. He looked about 16 or 17 years old. His temperament was relatively stable, not as lively as his age. The boy said, "Hello, Dr. Yi, my name is Bobby Drake, nicknamed Iceman, and a little naughty friend. How is she now?" Yi Hai looked at the boy and laughed. "She was just frightened and tired, so we better not disturb her. Speaking of, it is very gentle to sort out the naughty and scattered hair. In the process, you will inevitably encounter the naughty skin." The coldness was shocked, and when the two got out of the room, he couldn't wait to say, "Drive Yi, how could you not be afraid of her ability? How did you do it? Or is it your ability?" "Yes." Yi Hai nodded slightly. "My abilities are very special. I am a bit similar to Xiao Nadi and copy the ability of others, but I copy it completely without depriving others of the ability. I guess I have this. If you have the ability, you can be immune to the naughty deprivation." Quote, "Little naughty ability can deprive the ability and vitality of the people she contacts. She can't control herself, so the people in the college are afraid of her, and she basically has no friends here, except for the more enthusiastic Iceman, or this young man." The boy was in his youthful period. He was a little naughty and beautiful, and wanted to be friends with him, but he was afraid, hesitant, and the little naughty man discovered this and blocked himself lonely. Arise, not enthusiastic about this enthusiastic boy. If the Iceman can overcome his fears and pursue the naughty, it is easy to melt the heart castle cast by the naughty, as the movie plot generally won the heart of this beauty, but now the boy is clearly not ready for this. He saw Yi Hai's ability as very envious, and he is happy that Xiao Nadi can meet such a man. He said, "Drive Yi, I really envy your ability. I think you and Xiao Nadi are a natural pair. Xiao Nadi can meet you. I am happy for Xiao Nadi. Really, I am happy, Dr. Yi. Please treat her well." Quote, Iceman was a little excited and frustrated, but he was a kind child. Good education made him quickly wipe away the jealousy in his heart and blessed Yi Hai and Xiao Mischief. Yi Hai couldn't help crying or laughing. He had a good opinion of the little naughty little girl, but he didn't want to develop into a relationship between men and women. He already has Gwen. Now he is very satisfied with his girlfriend. Gwen is very intelligent, very smart, and lively. She is a little rebellious at this age, but overall she is still a good girl. Yi Hai remembered the beauty of her girlfriend, and suddenly realized that she hadn't seen her for a long time. Recently, the focus of Yi Hai's work has shifted to the mutant college, and Gwen has also gone to college. Her name is New York Imperial University, where Spider-Man Peter is. Thinking of Gwen, a gentle smile appeared on Yi Hai's face. The Iceman saw him, and his heart was a little bit sour. The boy was a little lost. He felt that he was not worthy of naughty. This world can give her happiness. This is Dr. Yi. This is the so-called fate of heaven. Yi Hai didn't have time to pay attention to the boy's mood. He quickly walked into his laboratory and asked Zhan Nu to make a regenerating genetic medicine. Then he took the medicine and walked out of the mutant college. He passed through several streets and standing in a deserted place. Suddenly, like a gust of wind, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Yi Hai, a handsome man, dressed like a rebellious boy, but judging by his eyes, Yi Hai judged that this person was not young now, although he has a young man's face. Yi Hai thought of a man, his eyes suddenly flashed, and said, "Are you Fast Silver?" "Yes, I'm Kuayan. Wansi Wang asked me to pick up something." The young man raised the metal box in his hand and said in distress, "Wansi Wang was very careful and threatened me that if he messed up, he would pull out my skin. My God, what is so important?" Quote, Yi Hai took out the blue potion and said, "It's very important. Your boss lives on this potion. You have to be careful, Fast Silver." Kuayan suddenly changed color and shouted, "My God, has the boss got terminally ill? What's his problem?" No comment. Yi Hai shook his head, a little funny in his heart. This man is the son of King Magneto, so he won't hurt his own dad. Quicksilver carefully put the potion into the metal box, and then closed the box lightly, and then breathed a sigh of relief, saying, "Can your potion cure the disease of Magneto King?" "Certainly. Yi Haidao, you have to send it quickly, you have to use it at night. You look down on me. I can take it back in a few minutes. I don't have to wait until the evening." Quick Yin smiled a little, then flickered and disappeared. So fast. Yi Hai admired. With Yi Hai's eyesight, he didn't realize how he left. Such a speed is really appalling. Yi Hai returned to the Mutant Academy and walked into Professor X's room, where the professor was waiting for him. The professor said gently, Yi, Wanshi Wang agrees with our plan. Yes, he will not refuse. He also took a copy of the regenerating gene from me in exchange for a little naughty. It seems that the king of magnetism has also seen it, the professor said anxiously. Yi, your genetic technology is too horrifying. Once people notice it, those organizations and countries will rush to come. Are you ready for this? Quote. Yi Hai hesitated and said, I need to build a mutant army. He looked at the professor and wanted to get some inspiration or encouragement from the wise old man of 453, but the professor disappointed him. The professor is not a revolutionary. The professor shook his head and said, that will only plunge you into an endless war. You will lose many friends and relatives. Isn't this what you want to see? Yes, I don't want to see the painful price, so. Yi Hai smiled and said, so we still need allies. Allies. The professor froze slightly, and said, Yi, who are your allies? Yi Hai smiled hee. Of course it is a national leader, an elite figure in the political and business circles. The professor suddenly changed his color and said, Yi, do you want Wanshi Wang to succeed his plan at the summit? Yes. Don't worry, Professor. Yi Hai waved his hand. Wang Magnetic King's mutant human machine can only make people carrying the X gene into mutants, and some people on the Earth do not carry the X gene. Therefore, Wanshi Wang's machine can only produce some mutants at the summit. The number of people will not be very large, and it depends on luck. Such a low base does not seem to have much effect, but let the leaders of these countries realize that they, or their family and friends, may become mutants. This will make them jealous. Policies for oppressing mutants will basically not come out. Quote. The professor thought for a while and laughed. Yi, your strategy is very good, you already have the talent of a leader. This is affirmation of Yi Hai's ability. The professor has been consciously training Yi Hai to become a leader of mutants. But, Yi Hai laughed, we still have to stop the action of Wanshi King and let the people see our goodwill. This is our performance, hee. You're right. The professor nodded approvingly. His face was still so gentle. The wise old man looked at Yi Hai meaningfully, and seemed to see Yi Hai's strategies and ideas through. One thing Yi Hai hasn't said yet. The summit is very large. Many American officials and elites from various industries will participate. At that time, many political and business elites in the United States will be radiated by Magneto's machine. Whether they will become mutants, Yi Hai will use the potion to turn them into mutants. He is hidden in this conspiracy, and Wanshi Wang will carry a blame for him and be resentful by those elites. Liberty Island, also known as the Statue of Liberty Island, faces the southern end of Manhattan Island across the water in Upper New York Bay, covering an area of about 4 hectares. The Statue of Liberty on the island is a spiritual symbol of the United States. Tonight, the clouds are dark and dim, but Liberty Island is very lively and the lights are dazzling. The layout of the island is like the beautiful scenery of flowers and gardens, and high-level personnel of various countries move back and forth. On the perimeter of Liberty Island, in the dimly lit area, a serious security guard stood intently in his post, daring not to relax in the slightest, because the influence of the meeting tonight can be said to be very large, affecting the future of mutants' fate. Those mutants are likely to make trouble, and they have to be careful not to have a little accident, otherwise the consequences will be disastrous. However, how these police officers were vigilant and faced with the strange ability of the mutants was still dwarfed. Around Liberty Island, even if they sent a large number of police officers to block the sea, it was useless. Yi Hai's purpose here today is to rescue the X-Men, not to cause X-Men to suffer casualties, and then secretly let Wanshi Wang succeed in this plan. The conference on Liberty Island has already begun. This conference that has a bearing on the fate of the world will definitely take a long time to discuss, even a few days is normal. Mutants have plenty of time to execute their plans. At night, a small fishing boat crossed the government's maritime blockade, sailed to Liberty Island, and stopped under the Statue of Liberty. Then a steel machine floated up and stood on it a man in black. As soon as the man in black waved at the fishing boat, many figures rushed out of the fishing boat. These figures were very fast, and the security personnel under the statue were resolved in a few moments, and then hidden. These people are of course Wang. The man in black glanced in the direction of Yi Hai, smiled vaguely, and then used the ability of the magnetic field to quickly lift off the mutant machine and flew to the torch of the Statue of Liberty. Yi Hai's eyes were directed at the towering Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty, about 100 meters high, was made of pure copper and covered with steel less than 3 millimeters thick. Wang Wenggong just put the machine on the torch, and a bright light flew fast in the distance, and came to a stop under the Statue of Liberty. X-Men members arrived. There are not many X-Men's personnel. In addition to the old-fashioned mutants such as Laser Eye, Storm Girl, and Phoenix Girl, Optoelectronics and Wolverine were added. The five looked around. Wolverine wondered. Yi Hai appeared. Quote. The Phoenix Girl said, he should be delayed. Let's wait. But time did not wait for people. The Magneto King on the statue immediately turned on the mutant machine. With the rapid rotation of the machine, all visible white-color silk threads flew from the machine and radiated to the surrounding area. Getting wider. The X-Men was startled, and the Phoenix Girl called out, we can't wait any longer, we must hurry up to stop him. The X-Men rushed in, and they soon found that their side was too thin, because there were more than a dozen people on the other side, and it seemed that Magneto King was very determined to make this plan a success. A Crimson Witch alone is enough for them. They also have the elites such as Quicksilver and White Queen. They will subdue 5 X-Men in no time. Fortunately, these people did not mean to harm the X-Men, they were only controlled by their ability to move. Queen White looked at the subdued X-Men elites and shook her head helplessly. Why can't you understand the intention of Wan Chi King? Do you think humans are grateful for helping humans? Humans hate us, and we also hate you. In their eyes, we are mutants, and you are also mutants, and they are also mutants. It makes no difference. Look at these national leaders, they don't talk about the oppression of the mutants. They are blind to the good intentions of the mutants. They just want to establish a bill to lock up our group of mutants as wild animals. What are they doing? Quote. Speaking of which, the delicate voice of Queen White also became exhilarated, and her face was filled with excitement and anger. Red halo. Several partners beside her were about to spit fire, and they have all experienced human beings. Lock it up. After seeing few people have nothing to say, the Queen continued, detention, dissection, all kinds of inhumane experiments. They will put you on a test bench and use various methods to experiment with your body. In their eyes, your body is no different from a white mouse bunny. They will cut your body with a knife, torture your nerves with an electric shock, open your skulls, and look at the structures inside. Quote. Every time the White Queen said something, the faces of the Tide people were darkened, especially Scott. Scott was caught by X-weapons when he was a teenager, and then a series of experiments were carried out. The dim and horrible place is still fresh in memory, which is a terrible experience, and it has often turned into a nightmare. With the Queen's remarks, he couldn't help thinking about the treatment that he and the mutants had suffered when he was arrested, iron cages, and the mutants were locked in like animals. Those caught mutants had adults and children, and men and women. Then, in the face of endless torture and experiments, good luck, broken arms and few legs, unlucky whole body became blurred, and it seemed that the skin of the whole body was cut off, and it was still returned to the cage like a dead dog. Some people are mad because they can't stand the torture or have been stimulated by experiments to become vegetative. The researchers looked blank, their eyes were cold, and their eyes looked no different from those of beasts. At the time, he couldn't believe why these people were so cruel to them just because they were mutants. After many years, he finally knew the reason. The reason was that simple, because they were mutants. So they have reasons to not treat them as people. Thinking of this, Scott was silent and didn't know how to refute, because what Queen White said was true, it was just an undisclosed secret operation. Queen White said, have you ever thought about what this mutant would bring us if the legislation is successful this time? Let me tell you these idiots. The more she said and became more excited, almost all of them would burst into flames of anger. They can just rightly experiment with mutants because they have legislation. They are free to buy and sell mutants and treat them as slaves because they already legislated. Those unseen laboratories will be continuously open, and then many laboratories will be established because they have already enacted legislation. Quote. Isn't they going to legislate to treat mutants? So, what if they become mutants themselves? Become monsters in their mouths, what kind of faces would they be, isn't it interesting? Ha ha. With the Queen of White Queen's laughter, several of her companions also laughed. They all looked forward to seeing this good show. It was so much fun that they laughed when they thought about it. But your machine has big flaws and it will only make the leaders of these countries dead. The Phoenix Girl retorted loudly. The Queen White looked at the Phoenix Girl with a few surprises, and suddenly smiled. She said, "Did your Dr. Yi not tell you? In the past few days, he has been working in our base in Washington for 5 days. The defects of the mutant human machine are perfect, and the problems you worry about will not happen again." Quote. What? The X-Men looked at each other, smiling randomly and bitterly. No wonder Yi Hai didn't show up. It turned out that he had been colluding with Wanqi Wang. They were very angry and felt that Yi Hai had betrayed them, but randomly thought that if this mutant machine would not cause casualties, it could really turn high-level people in various countries into mutants, then the bill against mutants would certainly not be passed, otherwise it is just joking about their own lives. With that said, what Wanqi Wang did was the right thing, but they did stupid things. Thinking of this, the X-Men's people went underground and remained silent. At this time, a mutant whispered, "Queen White, the X-weapons are dispatched, and their plane is flying towards the Statue of Liberty. I just realized that these people are really dull enough." The White Queen mocked it slightly, and then cried, "Let's fight." As she waved her hand, the mutants under her jumped up and hid. The White Queen released the X-Men directly, and looked at them and asked, "Now do you know the importance of our plan? So, do you want to join us to fight back those X-weapons?" The members of the X-Men looked at each other for a few moments, and they were basically hesitant, but Logan stood up without hesitation and said fiercely, "Of course, I always have to deal with those scum." The Phoenix Girl shouted, "Logan, do you want to put the Mutant College in trouble? If you do this, you will consider human conquest as our enemy." Chapter 51. Let's go it all. Wolverine yelled harshly, "Don't any of you want to stop me from killing these hybrids?" Wolverine has been tortured and tortured by the X-weapon in the past for a long time. Although most of these memories have been lost, from which fragmented memories he still finds some vague memories, these memories are hazy and cannot be seen clearly, but the pain and anger was so intense. "Every time I think of it," he shuddered. He also found the source of pain and anger from these feelings, that is, the X-weapon. Intuition told him that he had experienced hell-like experiments, and these miscellaneous pieces must have done a lot of unbearable experiments on himself. For example, his bones had been transformed into these strong alloys, and it must be these miscellaneous pieces. He vowed to make these miscellaneous things pay the price, and pay them back hundreds of thousands of times of his pain. Now that the X-weapon appeared, Wolverine filled his brain with anger, his eyes flushed, and his spirits were stretched out. His 2 fists stretched out, and he screamed out of the Statue of Liberty. "Logan!" The Phoenix Girl shouted behind him. Wolverine turned a deaf ear and soon disappeared into the darkness. The Queen White smiled sweetly. "This heroic warrior is full of blood and cruelty. He wants to kill the other army. Unfortunately, he is too reckless. If he rushes out with such a single gun, he will only become a captive of X-weapon. Become a poor guinea pig." Quote. At last she looked at Scott and said, "Scott, are you the captain of the X-Men, just watching your teammates go to the net?" Scott gritted his teeth and said, "Let's cooperate with him." But Phoenix Girl wanted to stop, but Scott solemnly said, "Chin, remember that the purpose of our peaceful coexistence with humanity is to allow our community to survive. This is our purpose, and we need us now. Do it." Quote. "Captain, we listen to you." Dianguang, who just joined, made the first statement. The others nodded, and the members of the X-Men rushed out. Watching the figure of the X-Men rushing out, the Queen smiled softly and sneered, "The professor who wants to fisherman's profit sees his children desperately, I don't know what it will be like." Quote. The Shield's flying carrier has been monitoring Liberty Island, but the mutants have many ways to evade their surveillance. They knew that the Magneto King turned on the machine, and they realized that something was going to happen. They quickly informed General Stryker of X-weapon and let his army act immediately. There are a lot of powerful agents in S.H.I.E.L.D., but it still seems a little overwhelming to deal with strange mutants, so it is generally handed over to the professional department, X-weapons. The X-weapon has studied mutants for decades, and has invented many machines to deal with mutants. They are very experienced in dealing with mutants. Magneto brought so many people this time, mainly to deal with the X-weapon. This time Liberty Island legislation for the mutants, it was long expected that the other party would come to trouble, so the X-weapon came out of the nest and lurked around Liberty Island. Now seeing the appearance of those white silk threads, General Stryker realized that something was wrong and immediately ordered his army to be dispatched. The first thing to arrive was a helicopter. When they saw the Magneto on the torch of the Statue of Liberty, several missiles flew out without hesitation. The Scarlet Witch, who had been protecting Magneto, saw his hands flashing red halo. The missiles flew back and rushed towards the helicopter. The pilots were taken aback and quickly drove the helicopter to avoid it. Their commander shouted, "You idiots, haven't you found out that Magneto can't use abilities now? Then use metal bullets to vent them, go out and give me a hard hit." The soldiers who heard the order immediately attacked Magneto with a firearm. The Scarlet Witch quickly held up a scarlet shield to protect Magneto. Overwhelming bullets hit the shroud, only a few ripples, but the shroud began to get smaller. The Scarlet Witch couldn't hold on, shouting, "Red Devil!" Suddenly a red figure appeared among the soldiers. The red dagger quickly swept away and took away a life. The soldiers retaliated, but the red figure disappeared in a flash, and then suddenly appeared far away. Behind the soldier, after the soldier was killed, the figure quickly disappeared again. This man is the Red Devil, and he will teleport quickly. Faced with such a monster, the soldiers could not take him and watched their comrades die one by one. The rest of the soldiers couldn't bear it anymore, and they quickly retreated. Suddenly a blue figure appeared on the battlefield and stopped the red figure, and the two even scuffled. Whenever the Red Devil teleported behind a soldier, the blue figure would chase him in an instant and stop him from killing. This blue figure turned out to be a teleporting monster. "You even teleport?" The Red Devil was surprised. "Yes, my name is Blue Devil. I have heard of you. Is it called Red Devil? I know you are a senior," said the blue figure. "You are also a mutant, why do you help those clutter?" The Red Devil screamed angrily. The Blue Devil shrugged and said, "General Stryker said that you are killing innocent people. You are all pests in the mutants. If you don't stop you, it will not only bring disaster to humans, but also to mutants. You just believe that mess." The Red Devil was so angry that he punched him. The Blue Devil escaped easily and said happily, "Of course, General Stryker is like my father." "Hey, the Red Devil, we're half a caddy, so it doesn't make much sense to fight so much, let's just stop and rest right." Quote. When the Red Devil heard that the mutant even recognized the thug as his father, King Jout, he was furious and called, "Go to death, miscellaneous. You can't hit me." The Blue Devil grinned and escaped with ease and teleportation. When he was about to laugh, he suddenly tightened his neck and was caught by a young man. You. The Blue Devil's pupils instantly enlarged, and he looked at the young man in shock with a look of shock. His teleportation speed was very fast. For so many years, it was the first time that he was caught by his hand. This young man looks ordinary and is a white man. In fact, Yi-Hai changed. He is very interested in the Blue Devil and Red Devil's teleport ability. He is not good at catching the Red Devil, but the Blue Devil is Stryker. "People, there is nothing to worry about." Yi-Hai had a lot of strength, just grasping, holding the Blue Devil's neck lightly. The suffocation feeling made him very scary. Suddenly his body flickered into a black smoke, the figure disappeared into the night, together with Yi. The sea is gone. The place where the two appeared again was an underground prison, surrounded by an unknown power grid. The special magnetic field erupting in it seemed to be able to isolate some special abilities, but it had no effect on Yi-Hai because of his mental strength. System help. Dee. The sudden intrusion of the two had been detected by the guards here, and the alarm sounded around them. Many soldiers flocked in and looked inside. A colonel asked, "Blue Devil, why did you come back suddenly? Did the general ask you to come back?" Quote. "No, yes." The Blue Devil bit his face, shaking his neck slightly. He. "Who is this person?" The colonel also found something wrong and yelled at Yi-Hai, "Who are you? Hurry up and let the Blue Devil go. This room is specially used to detain your mutants. Inside. Ability is not available." Quote. "Is it the code?" Yi-Hai smiled coldly, 2 red rays burst out in his eyes, and stroked on the wall. Boom! The thick alloy wall was instantly opened, and those weird magnetic fields were destroyed and never appeared again. The Blue Devil fell loose and was preparing to teleport. Yi-Hai tightened his right hand and yelled, "You mess again, I'll choke you if you run." Quote. The Blue Devil's courage was not great. He quickly asked for mercy. Okay, I won't move anymore, don't kill me." Yi-Hai asked, "What is this place?" "This is my home." The Blue Devil was a little vague. "Your home?" Yi-Hai hesitated for a moment, remembering randomly that this place should be the old nest of General Stryker. It was so good. The Blue Devil took him to this place subconsciously in fear. "BGBB. It's great, Blue Devil. I thank you very much for inviting me to your house." Yi-Hai smiled and walked out of the cave with the Blue Devil. At this time, the soldiers were already in a mess, commanded by the colonel, and gathered together with special weapons. The colonel shouted among the soldiers, "Mutant in front, listen to me, you are surrounded by us, let the Blue Devil, you surrender." Yi-Hai didn't talk nonsense, she shot directly with excitement. In the past, the colonel's body was shot in half, and the scorching smell of flesh and blood fluttered in the air. These soldiers were all well-trained soldiers. They remained motionless and saw their superiors killed and immediately fired back. Da. Flames were sprayed out, and the specially made bullets flew out, but all were strangely suspended in midair. Then Yi-Hai waved his left hand, and the bullets flew back again, turning the soldiers into horse honeycombs. In an instant, the soldiers died. The gunfire disappeared, and only a sharp alarm sound remained in the entire space. Are you the Magneto King?" The Blue Devil horrified. The method of controlling the return of the bullet just now is the masterpiece of Wan Chi Wong. Outsiders will inevitably think that Yi-Hai is Wan Chi Wong. "I'm not the Magneto King." Yi-Hai smiled. "Are there only ordinary soldiers here? Are there any mutants here?" "No, my brothers have been taken to Liberty Island by General Stryker." The Blue Devil shook his head. "How could it not?" Yi-Hai asked coldly. "What about the mutants? You give me the truth, otherwise I don't mind turning you into a pile of corpses." "What guinea pig? Don't tell me that the general is very good to our mutants. How can we treat them as guinea pigs?" The Blue Devil's blue face was a little angry, and it seemed not to be a lie. Yi-Hai frowned at him, suddenly remembering that Stryker used his son's fantasy master to control the mutants. Is the Blue Devil controlled by this guy's fantasy, creating some illusions in his mind? Thinking of this, Yi-Hai no longer embarrassed him. After all, he was also a poor man. Yi-Hai Lang snorted and said, "Since this is the case, I'll see how good this Stryker is to the mutant." Yi-Hai walked around at this military base at random. During that time, soldiers constantly stopped him. He used many methods and was easily cracked by Yi-Hai. The other party suffered heavy losses. Quickly informed General Stryker, but X-Weapon is now at a critical moment fighting with Magneto's men. How dare to rescue them back? Why was our base discovered by Wan Chi King? General Stryker's face was full of anger, and the eyes were flashing with fierce light. He stared at the white silk threads that were spreading on the sea and shouted, "Who is the guy who is setting up? What equipment can I check?" Quote. "It is some kind of radiant energy that will destroy human genes, because the time is too short and the others have not been identified yet." Wei reported. "Radiant energy, my god, is Magneto crazy? Does he want to kill all the leaders of these countries?" Stryker couldn't make a point, and laughed randomly. "If Magneto is really so crazy, that is their end. The all-out war between us humans and mutants will begin today." Ha. Quote. Stryker was happy again, thinking to himself, "I won't stop such a good thing, let Wan Chi Wong go crazy." Suddenly someone interrupted his imagination. "Report the general and find that the X-Men have joined the opponent's camp and are attacking our army." What? Stryker was startled, shouting, "Send all military power and mutant weapons, be sure to stop the action of Magneto. Magneto is a terrorist and everything will be done, but X-Men are different. They are very principled and full of kindness to human beings. They are all doing things that are beneficial to mutants, so this time the X-Men also joined resistance. Obviously, Magneto is doing something beneficial to the mutants. No matter what it is, as long as it is beneficial to the mutants, General Stryker must obstruct it." The X-Men, who had been perfunctory, were immediately dispatched in full. Those weapons dedicated to the mutants were used, and the pressure on the mutants increased. What? Wolverine roared loudly, regardless of the bullets released on him, wielding steel claws to kill the special forces who killed X weapons. Logan, there are too many soldiers on the other side, let's withdraw first. Stryker hid behind an obstacle and shouted at Wolverine. Wolverine was unaware, his eyes were red, and he rushed into the X weapon's position like a lunatic. Suddenly there was a long howling, a cannonball flew over the air, and it exploded not far away without warning, and huge stones flew into the sky. X-Men was terrified, and quickly fell to the ground. Immediately after, one after another shells flew, and then a loud noise rang, and the ground kept shaking, like a volcano, like an earthquake, and more like thousands of horses running by. The sand and gravel fell like rain from the sky, and the exploding people were in deep pain. Be careful, the keen Phoenix girl reminded loudly, and then there was a loud noise, and the Storm girl and Dianguang were hit by a cannonball. Oh, the Phoenix girl and Scott blasted their heads, shuddered, and almost never fainted. The Phoenix girl screamed, "Aurora!" The Phoenix girl ran mad and rushed into the huge pit. The Storm girl and Dianguang were lying in it, their clothes were broken, but they were unharmed. They were looking at the fast-healing wound on her body. What's going on? Phoenix girl also saw. When did you two have Wolverine's metamorphosis recovery ability? I don't know. Storm girl was a little confused. Did we both awaken the mutant ability for the second time? Impossible. The Phoenix girl shook her head slightly. The second awakening is there, but it is impossible that both of you will awaken regenerative power at the same time, is it? With the eyes of the Phoenix woman brightening, she suddenly took out a dagger and made a stroke on her arm, and then the three of them were surprised. The wound on the Phoenix woman's arm healed quickly, but recovered within a few seconds. As it is, it never seemed to be hurt in general. What's going on? Chin, you also awakened the ability to regenerate. The Storm woman has an incredible face, which is also a coincidence. Isn't our mutant college a treasure of feng shui? After a period of time in Chinatown, the Storm woman still recognized the feng shui treasure in the Chinese population. At this time, I could not help thinking of a feng shui master flickering to her. Not awakened. The figure of Yi-Hai who had been counted in the Phoenix female's head smiled slightly. I know what the reason is, but when this is not the case, let's fight these soldiers first. Okay, Storm girl smiled and said, now we can't fight, so don't worry about it, just punch me. Okay, let's rush. In an instant, the X-Men became heroic, stopped hiding, rushed into the X-weapon camp, massacred these special soldiers, and defeated these people. The Million Magnetic King on the torch saw everything below at a glance, a smile drew from the corner of his mouth, and increased the output of the magnetic field. The speed of those white silk threads spreading on the sea surface increased several times, and they rushed towards Free Island. At the same time, Wansiwang's face quickly aging, his hair turned white, wrinkles on his face were crisscrossed, and he was old. The Scarlet Witch was startled. When she was about to stop, she suddenly opened her mouth and looked at Wanqiwang in surprise, only to see Wanzhong's old-fashioned Long Zong's face turned into a middle-aged person's face. It quickly returned to the middle-aged person's appearance. Such a change back and forth repeatedly was weird. Such a weird thing. Most people are probably scared and frightened, but Scarlet Witch is a senior mutant. She quickly discovered the reason and wondered. This is the ability to regenerate. Quote, the rapid spread of dazzling white light has attracted the attention of the police on Liberty Island. They immediately issued an alarm and the entire staff was on alert. The politicians of various countries looked at the white silk thread that rushed towards them, their faces changed greatly, they panicked, and the scene was in chaos. What it is? It seems like radiation. Oh my God, will we die? Let's get out of here soon. The white clouds composed of silk threads quickly drowned Liberty Island. The people on Liberty Island did not feel abnormal. Only a few people felt that their bodies were uncomfortable, like having a high fever. The crowd was horrified, all kinds of speculations were in place, and the meeting could not go on. They all went to the hospital for examination. General Stryker watched Liberty Island overwhelmed by the white silk thread. He threw the documents in his hand fiercely, and became furious, venting his anger. After a while, he sank. We don't have to complete the task, no more wasted military power, let our soldiers stop. Quote, yes. At this time an assistant said, General, the other party has started to evacuate. Sure enough, Stryker glanced fiercely at the Statue of Liberty. At that moment, the American symbol was in a state of horror, completely different from a human figure, and after the media report tomorrow, the Americans would be what reaction? Their purpose is to put those white radiating silk threads. What exactly do these silk threads do? You will find out as soon as possible. General Stryker ordered. There is nothing for us here. Call the Blue Devil and let our mutant army return to the base to support it immediately. General, base report, the Blue Devil and the invaders conspired to bring the intruder into the base. The assistant said carefully, the other party has destroyed the laboratory. General Stryker lifted the table angrily. This is the bottom floor of the base, filled with special iron cages, some of which are empty, and some of them are holding some mutants, including men, women, old and young. They all stare at the Blue Devil and Yi-Hai with an expression of hopelessness, full of despair. You said, these people are all mutants. The Blue Devil's ugly face was full of unbelievable look. He thought and thought about holding his head, and couldn't understand why there was a hidden laboratory under the base. You were also the experimenter here, but then the illusion master created an illusion in your mind and covered up the original memory, so you will feel that General Stryker is a good man. In fact, just the opposite, he is an uncompromising executioner. Quote. Yi-Hai looked at the Blue Devil with compassion, and turned to the researchers in the laboratory full of anger. The base's guards were almost killed. By torture an officer, he found a base laboratory, where dozens of mutants are detained. They are not alive, and they were tortured to death. More people are afraid. Let us go, we just do it. An old scientist looked at Yi-Hai beggingly. His hair was gray, his face pale, and he was dressed in a white coat, like a doctor in a hospital. But what he did was not to save the wounded, but to dissect the mutant. When Yi-Hai and the Blue Devil broke in, the old man dissected the whole body of the little girl. The little girl was screaming in pain and screaming. The screams filled the entire room, but he remained motionless, his hands remained steady and dedicated doing his thing. Eventually the little girl lost in pain, her child's eyes really widened, her pupils were scattered, and her tears were flowing. The Blue Devil just saw this scene. He collapsed, clutching his brain in pain and shouting, "These are all false, they must be false, they are all illusions, they are all illusions. You're right, Blue Devil, this is all hallucination, all this man is a ghost, kill him." The old avatar caught the life-saving straw and quickly encouraged the Blue Devil. A blue light broke out in the eyes of the Blue Devil. Suddenly, a front flutter flung the old man to the ground, his sharp teeth gnawed at the old man's neck, and his mouth swelled. Shouted, "Executioner, you executioner." In the scream, the old man was torn into pieces by the Blue Devil. The Blue Devil was still reconciled, and he turned his fierce gaze to other researchers in the laboratory. The researcher burst into cold air and quickly took out the weapon, but as soon as he grabbed the weapon flew to the sky and fell on the ground beside Yi-Hai. Roar! The Blue Devil gritted his teeth and yelled loudly. He turned into black smoke, appeared next to the researchers, and took their lives with their paws one by one. Good job, Yi-Hai said with a compliment, catching the last researcher who was the administrator here. Get all the research data here, I can consider saving you a life. The man was very angry, and smiled slightly. I know what I have done, you kill me, I think it. Yi-Hai sneered. If you don't come up with the information, I will put you on the test bench. I think there will be a lot of mutants willing to give you experiments. The man trembled slightly and smiled bitterly. Okay. I'll get it out. This person opened a device, which was filled with a lot of information, but Yi-Hai just looked at it, and knew that this guy was not honest, and the research information in it was not comprehensive, it was only a small part of it. Looks like you don't want to live, Yi-Hai said coldly. This person said calmly, anyway, I will hand it over, and you will kill me. And you killed all these scientists, and you won't be able to get the information. UCA and master our research technology. Quote. Do you think I'm for your technology? Yi-Hai disdained, your technology is not worth mentioning in my eyes, and it's no different from the on the roadside. I want to take your research data for the world understand how much the mutants have suffered over the years. Quote. The man was taken aback. Do you want to announce these things? Yeah, with a wave of Yi-Hai, the man flew out, hitting his head on the ceiling, his skull cracked and his brain flowing. It doesn't matter if you don't get the data password, as long as he finds the storage device here, he can crack the protection measures by himself. Yi-Hai connected to the central computer Zan knew through the network. Zan knew, crack the password here. Yes, Zan knew immediately put into work. She transferred the intelligent program and started the cracking work. After about 10 minutes, Zan Nu said, Master, I have cracked the level and found a lot of variants. Personal information, would you copy these? Quote. Download all this information and destroy these devices. Okay, Master. Zan Nu moves quickly. She quickly downloads these materials, and then all these devices are destroyed. The Blue Devil was a bit lost, and he looked at Yi-Hai blankly. Yi Haidao said, Blue Devil, let's move these mutants out quickly. General Stryker is expected to return soon. They are now in New York, USA, far from here. Without my teleport, they need to fly for hours to come back. The Blue Devil said that General Stryker was still a little confused, and what he saw and heard now had a great impact on him, but the ability of Master Fantasy was very strong and still affected him. I always imagined that these things were not done by General Stryker, but reasonably told him, as the highest level personnel of the base, how could he not know this laboratory? Can you take these people to New York? Yi-Hai patted the Blue Devil on the shoulder, and saw that the mutants in the cage were still listless. It seems that what happened just now, they did not see the average. Yi-Hai easily tore the iron cage with both hands, and released the mutants in it. These mutants were free, but at a loss. Many people were obviously out of mind. They were sometimes shy, sometimes loud, crying, emotionally unstable. Yi-Hai's eyes were getting colder and colder. He said, Brothers and sisters, I'm the same as you, but also a mutant. Don't you be nervous. You saw it just now. We have killed those who have been abused. Treat your researchers. Now that you are free, you can return to human society. Quote. An old man with gray hair raised his deformed hands and cried, I'm like this, can I live on my own when I go out? I still starve to death. Yeah, most of us are beyond recognition and we can no longer live in human society. Someone echoed, sad and hopeless. They were afraid here, but it wasn't outside for them. Yi-Hai comforted. Everyone can rest assured that I have a way to house you. You should have heard of the mutant college, right? I put you in the mutant college, where there are mutants, and you can live a good life. These talents showed a grateful look, and after they agreed, they went to the mutant college. Finally, Yi-Hai patted the Blue Devil's shoulder and said, I need you to take us there now. Can you do that? The Blue Devil looked at more than 30 mutants and nodded firmly. Rest assured, I will take them to the mutant college. The Blue Devil's teleporting ability is very powerful. He can teleport as long as he has been on the Earth. Have you been to the Mutant Academy? Yi-Hai froze slightly, only to remember that the Blue Devil seemed to be a member of the X-Men before, and was later arrested by X-Weapons. Some impression. The Blue Devil touched his head a bit, and touched his head, and then began to teleport. He could teleport 7 or 8 people at a time. It took 5 times to send all these people to the mutant college, and then he leaned and fell to the ground. Yi-Hai was taken aback and quickly helped him up. The Phoenix girl came over and said, Don't worry, he just uses power to get tired, and rest will be fine. This is the Blue Devil, Yi-Hai introduced. I know. The Phoenix girl touched the Blue Devil's face, pitying. He was also a Nightwalker, once our companion, but he disappeared afterwards. We guessed it was struck, but I never found their base. Yi, thank you so much for bringing him back. Quote. Seeing her grateful look, Yi-Hai smiled and said, Thank me. No wonder I didn't show up on the battlefield. The Phoenix girl laughed. You have given us the best protection, and we can do it without you. It seems that you already know your regeneration ability. Yi-Hai smiled. The Phoenix woman's eyes froze and she gritted her teeth. That Stryker must die. Yi-Hai's eyes were bursting, shooting. Morin's light came out coldly. That Stryker is very cunning. I have observed it through satellites. This guy has not returned to that base at all. It seems that he knows he is our opponent is hiding. Quote. This guy is a rat that drills holes everywhere. The X-Men and the Magneto King have sought him for many years, chased him for many years, and let him escape. The Phoenix girl was full of evil spirits, and an invisible wave radiated out. The stones and leaves around her floated up, and an incredible force flashed away. But at this moment, Yi-Hai felt an immense amount of energy, which was full of darkness and chaos. It seemed endless and undetectable. Yi-Hai frowned slightly. It seems that the Phoenix girl's condition is not very stable. Is her Black Phoenix about to appear? Was it another character that was stimulated by her anger? Yi-Hai quickly comforted. Chin, dealing with people like Stryker doesn't require us to shoot. We can let him drop the abyss, there will never be a chance to stand up. Oh, what can you do? Phoenix women's eyes brightened, the chaos stabilized, the surrounding shock suddenly calmed down, and the stones and leaves fell back to the ground. Yi-Hai slowly said, although Stryker is cruel, in fact, it is the running dog of the government. As long as the government no longer implements oppressive policies against mutants, Stryker is useless. By then, I only need throwing out their experimental data. Stryker became the one pointed by Chinfu, abandoned by the government, and ended up in the military court. Quote, what you said is true, but the premise is that the government supports our mutants. The question is whether the government will do this. Phoenix Girl was a little worried. Yi-Hai smiled and said, tonight, Magneto has been very successful. There must have been mutants in the senior officials who have been radiated. Then we only need to push a fire, and the mutant bill will not be promulgated. Push a fire. The Phoenix Girl looked at the treacherous guy and couldn't help asking, how are you going to push? I've asked the witch girl to do it. In order to quickly check the high-level countries, these people were sent to major hospitals. The most famous medical experts were then convened from all over the country. New York University Hospital. It is heavily guarded here, with a lot of dark whistle and whistle. Many super soldiers have appeared, such as the legendary Captain America guarded here. Although they did a lot of protection, they were still unable to guard against the unpredictable witch. Now Witch Girl has become a nurse. She is preparing to infuse an elderly person, who is known to Americans and is the President of the United States. Suddenly, the alarm sounded, and a group of people rushed in with a whirlwind, holding an instrument in their hands, and the instrument kept flashing red light. The witch woman was startled and was about to explode. The head of the Captain America looked at the US President in shock. Oh my God, Mr. President, are you a mutant? How is this possible? A person next to him objected immediately, staring at the US President fiercely. This person must not be the President of the United States, he is a mutant, such as the witch girl has this ability. Quote. The guards were suddenly shocked and immediately gathered up. The US President shouted, what do you want to do? It's ridiculous. How could I be a mutant? Is your instrument broken? The guards hesitated for a while. After all, the other party was the President of the United States. They couldn't mess around. It was also possible that the equipment was broken. Captain America Shen said, retake a device to test. After a person went to pick up the equipment, Captain America addressed the President of the United States and said, Mr. President, no matter who you are, please don't move around so that we may not do unpleasant things. The President of the United States smiled bitterly for a while. He would be able to taste the distress of the mutants. Fortunately, I am not a mutant. I will be the President of the United States again when I get good equipment. He thought so. With a sneer in her heart, she could be sure that the US President had become a mutant because she gave him a shot a few minutes ago and injected him with X-gene medicine. Now the President's body has undergone drastic changes and is beginning to transform into mutants. Soon another device was brought over, but to the disappointment of the President of the United States, as soon as the device was turned on, a beeping alarm was issued, which kept calling. This is the matter. The US President was so shocked that it was impossible for both machines to be broken. Seeing Captain America's eyes began to turn cold and he pointed at the magical woman next to him. Did you make a mistake? Maybe this little nurse is a mutant. The witch-shaped woman quickly pretended to be a little girl, and was so frightened that she desperately waved her hand and said, I'm not a mutant. Captain America just glanced at her lightly and shook his head. We have carefully checked every nurse and doctor in the hospital, so this mutant Mr. or Miss, you show your original form, I don't want to be rough here. Quote. Facing the cold gaze of Captain America, the President of the United States shuddered and shouted angrily, Steve, my patience is limited. Don't use this as a joke, I have been under the protection of the guard, how could those mutants have the ability to replace me? Quote. Captain America ignored him, grabbed him, slammed him to the ground, and asked sternly, Mutant, where are you hiding, Mr. President? How did you do that? Say. Quote. The President of the United States almost fell apart. He wanted to stand up, but Captain America stepped on the ground directly. This dignity was trampled. He was so angry that he shouted, "Come here, America." The captain rebelled. Quote, his scream penetrated the outside. Naturally, many people could hear the scream of the president. The outside guards were taken aback and suddenly took out firearms and swarmed in. The captain of the guard pointed at the gun and called to Captain America, "Steve, why are you rebelling?" Captain America and the people around him were speechless, and a member beside him said quickly, "This is the case. This person is not Mr. President. He is a mutant. Our mutant detector detects it accurately." Wrong. The captain of the guard was slightly puzzled. When he saw the detector in his hand kept screaming, he frowned. "He is a mutant. This matter is important, and we must further confirm." "You must be mistaken. I'm not a mutant. I'm a real American president," the American president said confidently. The President of the United States did have different identities. He immediately called for experts to confirm that the various instruments had been set up for more than an hour, but what made the US president desperate was that all the instruments were realized, and he was a mutant. "Mutant, say, where have you got Mr. President? What is your purpose for doing this?" Guard Captain Jin K lifted the President of the United States off the chair, and he stepped on his stomach with a kick. His abdomen twitched and twitched, vomiting horribly. "Mutants, you should all be locked up on the test bench." The President of the United States has a chill in his heart. Now he can truly understand the treatment of mutants, and understand why the mutants are always violent. If it is always so rough, the American president will also become a terrorist. "It's up. I am really the President of the United States," he said weakly. Snapped. He stepped on his chest again. This reckless man exerted a lot of strength. He probably had several ribs broken in his chest. The President of the United States blew his breath and died alive. Although this reckless husband was so rough because he cared about himself, he would not have gratitude in his heart, and he was so angry that he decided to make this guy look good. The captain of the guard stared fiercely at the President of the United States. Seeing him silent, his left leg was raised, and violence was about to begin. Suddenly a man rushed into the interrogation room and shouted to the captain of the guard, "Stop, stop, Jink, you stop it for me," and he hit the president. "What?" The captain was taken aback. "What's going on? Isn't he a mutant?" "He's a mutant, yes, but he is also the President of the United States." The Comer quickly lifted the President of the United States and apologized. "I'm sorry, Mr. President, we made a mistake. We have checked your DNA. It is indeed the President of the United States, but it has also become a mutant." Quote, "How did I become a mutant?" The President of the United States was pale, and he could not afford to retaliate against the captain of his guard. The experience of this hour made him very afraid of the identity of the mutant. "Mr. President, do you remember the white silk thread on Liberty Island?" The Comer looked at the US president with a complex look. "That is a kind of radiation that can turn people into mutants." "So, do politicians in various countries become mutants?" The US president screamed. "Not all, but some people have become mutants." On the night of the summit, the island of Liberty was bombarded with sky. Although it was not long, people nearby really heard it, saw the fire in the distance, and the dense white that spread from the Statue of Liberty. The silk thread finally enveloped the entire Liberty Island. Although this kind of war scene is only small, it shocked the entire United States and even the whole world. There are various speculations outside the world. Some people say that the mutants attacked the island of Liberty. The National Army just defended them and drove the mutants away. Or they arrested and killed the mutants. Some people say that terrorists have appeared, and some people say that they are troubled by aliens, or some high-tech monsters, such as the lizard man a few months ago. All kinds of talks and rumors. The government has been silent on the issue of Liberty Island, and no matter how the press thinks about it, it has not come up with useful information. Media protests gave the government a free spirit to publish the facts, but the government turned a deaf ear and no senior officials came forward to explain the matter. What is even more weird is that after the battle on Liberty Island, politicians in various countries seemed to have suddenly lost interest in mutant legislation and did not propose to hold a summit meeting again. After a few days, the media finally found some clues. It turned out that many senior leaders were sick at the same time. For example, the President of the United States was unwell and unable to perform normal work. All of a sudden government personnel became extremely low-key, but some people still acted high-key during this period. That man is Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly has been doing things in a high-profile manner, and he has given speeches everywhere. The content of the speech is completely contrary to his previous argument. Before, he advocated banning mutants, but now he supports mutants. He believes that mutants are the evolution of humans and the future of mankind. People care about mutants. His speech frequently appeared on television, and the media was also happy to help him promote it, because he is now a controversial figure, and the public likes watching his show, whether it is in favor of the mutants or the people who oppose the mutants. Yi Hai-xian is okay today, dating Gwen in the hotel, and after they rolled the sheets, they started watching TV. In a news channel, Kelly yelled on the podium to care for mutants. Mutants are a small group, and many organizations and even the national government are persecuting mutants. His speech was full of emotions. Many people were moved by him, sympathetic to the mutants, but some people threw stones at him angrily. Human traitor. Get out of the earth. Liar. Liar. You liar. As the mutant your relative. You shameless liar. Opponents yelled and even wanted to move their hands. The scene was chaotic and the police couldn't maintain order. After that, Kelly stopped the speech and was forced to flee by the turbulent crowd. Media reporters were very excited, and they quickly caught up with the crowd to report. A beautiful female reporter caught an angry white man and asked, "Sir, why do you think Mr. Kelly changed his opinion on mutants?" The man shrugged and said, "Maybe he found out that his family or lover is a mutant." A black uncle next to him said, "His family is exposed to the public and has little privacy. If it is a mutant, the media has already reported it. It is estimated that his secret lover is a mutant. It seems my Mr. members are not so selfless." Quote, "What will his secret lover look like? Will he have 3 tits?" The white man grinned. "Wow, grip. 3 sons. Blessed is Mr. Kelly's fool," exclaimed the black uncle. In this farce, Gwen laughed and saw Yi Hai look dignified, then stopped the laughter and asked, "What's wrong, Yi? You see Mr. Kelly ugly, aren't you happy?" Yi Hai said silently, "Please, anyway, this guy is talking for our mutants. Do you need to be so happy? Don't you forget that you are now a mutant." Gwenton, BGCE, for a while, she has always lived in the human community, and she gets along well with her human friends, classmates, and really did not realize that she is a mutant, so others criticize the mutant. I have never felt the sympathy or sadness of a rabbit. Okay, I'm wrong. Gwen began to be coquettish, and asked strangely again, "This Kelly is really strange, hasn't he always advocated oppression of mutants? Is it really like the black uncle said, there is a variant human relationship, woman?" Quote, "The reason is simple." Yi Hai smiled. He has become a mutant himself. Do you want him to stand on the mutant's stand? What, he's a mutant? Gwen saw Yi Hai's mysterious smile, and suddenly realized, won't it be a ghost of you? Yi Hai pinched a little on her face and laughed, "You're right, it's the ghost I made. I turned him into a mutant. This guy used to be an anti-mutant radical. Now what? In this way, we have become mutants and have been directed to us immediately. This is the face of politicians. They can manipulate the people for their own interests at any time. As long as there are a large number of mutants in politicians and business, then we find that we actually solve the mutation. People are not difficult." Quote, Gwen giggled. "You still have a way." Sure enough, it is true that technology determines destiny. Mastering superb technology can affect the pattern of the world. Yi Hai smiled and said, "Mastered the superb technology?" "Yes, I just mastered the superb technology, haha." Gwen deliberately pretended to be cute, and said, "Superb technology, are you superb? How can I not feel it? I can only feel your brute force and your superb hold, force. Don't you dare to say that I don't have superb technology, it seems I have to show my housekeeping skills." Yi Hai was instantly angered, and slammed on like a fierce beast, and then the two began rolling the sheets again. In an underground base, many researchers in white coats were busy and looked nervously down there. There were rooms separated by thick tempered glass and strong alloys. Look at Mao, Xian, Wen, and Net. There is a middle-aged man standing in the room. It's remarkable that his left leg is gone. Osman's chairman, Norman Osborn, was talking and laughing kindly to an old man wearing a lieutenant general's uniform with a solemn face full of seriousness. This person is Army Lieutenant General Rose, who has a close relationship with Norman. The two have cooperated in many places. General Ross stared at the middle-aged man below with sharp eyes, and said, "Norman, this is your latest product." "I think not so good." Norman laughed. "This is the second generation of lizardmen. They can freely change between human and lizardmen. In the state of lizards, their bodies are extremely strong and they can still maintain human thinking." "Oh." General Rose became interested, and said in a dignified tone, "I need to see the appearance of this lizard man." "Okay." Norman instructed a researcher next to him, and the man immediately notified the middle-aged man underground, "Jeff, change your form and show your beast form." Jeff proudly said, "Lao Tzu's form is the strongest and most handsome in the lizard." "You are all optimistic." Then he yelled. His body swelled violently, and his body was quickly covered with green scales, but for a dozen seconds, a huge lizard more than 2 meters high appeared in front of everyone. The lizard swayed the thick tail, and the large table beside him suddenly shattered. Then he punched it against the iron wall, and the iron wall actually sunk into a large hole. Seeing this, Rose stood up in surprise and said, "Niece, very powerful beast. Well, by the way, how is his defense ability and recovery ability?" Norman smiled slightly. "Sorry, Ross, we are not a military base here, but we have done a rough test. Generally, lizard men can defend against large caliber rifles, and bullets cannot hurt their strong flesh. The most frightening thing it is their regenerative ability. Except that the head is not tested, they can recover quickly regardless of the damage of any department." Quote, "Norman, you just talked about their strengths and their weaknesses. Or, what are the side effects of your medicine?" Rose said calmly. It seemed that he was interested in this creature, but only interested. Norman knew that in order to make his lizard medicament munitions, he still needed further efforts. He slowly said, "The side effect is a little bit, that is, after the injection of this lizard gene, the more people will more and more affected by the lizard genes, the personality will become rude, and will be reported, stingy, but arrogant, very narcissistic, but they are not narcissistic, but they are narcissistic. Most of them lizardmen think lizard talent is the most beautiful creature in the world." Quote. Norman's tone was somewhat helpless. These flaws made him a headache, but he must be frank and cooperate with the army to allow him to hide nothing in the slightest. General Ross laughed aloud. "It seems that these guys no longer treat themselves as human beings. They have no sense of belonging to human beings. This may be difficult to control. Even worse, if we turn our American guys into such lizards, monsters, their parents will sue us for ruin." Quote. Norman laughed. "There is nothing wrong with this. Volunteers can be used. You see that the lizards here are all volunteers. I think there are many people in the army who are willing to become superhuman. You're right, there are a lot of these lunatics. Yes, they are really good killers on the battlefield. But," Rose glanced and Shen said, "are they easy to control? If it is one only uncontrollable beasts have no effect on the army. Uncontrolled troops cannot appear on the battlefield, which will bring disaster to themselves." Quote. "They are really out of control." Norman smiled slightly. "But you need to try, don't you? Just like our ancestors trained wild wolves into domestic dogs, this is a revolutionary process in human civilization." Rose groaned for a while, and finally shook his head. "Sorry, my old friend, I used to hold your view like this, and wanted to tame that green skin monster, but he gave us a lot of trouble, and we couldn't accept it out of control products. Norman, you better improve your products and make them obedient." Quote. "Okay, we will improve." Norman was disappointed, thinking of Yi Hai. If this young man stepped in, he should be able to improve the lizard man. At this time, an adjutant came quickly, and said gently in General Rose's ears, "General, we have found the whereabouts of that greenskin monster. Coincidentally, he appeared in New York." "That's great, we'll be right there." Rose stood up happily, apologizing to Norman, "My friend, I still have things, I have to deal with them first. Please help yourself." Watching General Rose leave in a hurry, Norman sneered, "Green monster. Is that Hulk? This guy hasn't given up on catching that beast. My product here is much better than that beast, this white, it's stupid to be ignorant." Quote. Norman knew something about General Ross. The green skin monster in General Ross's mouth was the famous Hulk. It is said that General Ross has arrested the Hulk for several years, but each time he escaped or suffered heavy losses. Norman felt that compared to that fierce Hulk, his lizard man was much more docile, but this Rose had to go closer and farther, which was really stupid. He randomly turned on his cell phone, connected his female secretary, and said, "Miss Natasha, help me contact Dr. Yi and say that I have something important to discuss with him." "Okay, Mr. Osborne," Natasha responded quickly. As soon as Yi-Hai returned to Osborne's office, Natasha ran over, saying that it was Mr. Norman, the chairman, who was looking for something. Yi-Hai followed Natasha out of the office and smiled. "Miss Natasha, do you know what Mr. Norman is looking for?" Natasha said with a smile. "Sorry, Dr. Yi, Mr. Norman just asked me to invite you," nothing else said. Yi-Hai smiled slightly. Instead of taking the matter to heart, she took a closer look at Natasha. A clear smile was raised at the corner of her mouth. Natasha noticed, and asked curiously, "What is there?" Question. "Dr. Yi." Quote. Yi-Hai stared straight at Natasha with a smile. "Miss Natasha, as a top agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., what does S.H.I.E.L.D. send you to Osborne Industrial Building? I am not already with God. Has the S.H.I.E.L.D. cooperated? Why are you, the top two agents, still here?" Natasha Zhao suddenly stiffened. She giggled randomly. "It turned out that you already knew my identity, Dr. Yi, you were really good." "Yes, I stayed in Osborne to monitor you. Who let you are so capable, our boss is very uneasy about you." Quote. Yi-Hai smiled slightly, suddenly grabbed her little waist, and said, "Would you like to monitor me? It would be better to be my secretary." Natasha slightly twisted Man Sang's posture, and gently broke away from Yi-Hai's salty pig's hand, and laughed softly. "Isn't this considering your girlfriend's feelings? If I were too close to you, will your girlfriend be jealous?" Quote. Yi-Hai pinched a bit in her muddy round ton department, and then he smiled. "You were right, I really can't be too close to you." Then he recovered a serious look, as if he had not done a little frivolous act to Natasha just now. Natasha's eyes flashed coldly, and she hated her teeth, but the other side was so powerful that she didn't dare to offend. Seriously, Yi-Hai just teased Natasha, or didn't mind playing with Mei, but getting in touch with this woman is still unnecessary. He had invaded the S.H.I.E.L.D. secret file long ago, and learned that Natasha has been active in Central Asia and Europe since the 1980s. At that time, she was a top Soviet agent, young and beautiful, and did not blink when she killed. He is good at using the United States to achieve the purpose of agents. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union, Natasha was introduced and entered the United States S.H.I.E.L.D. He is a very old and hot agent. Natasha was born in the 1960s, and is now in her 50s, because genetically modified technology has delayed the aging of the body. It still looks like she is in her 20s. Xing is fascinating and beautiful, but it is a real poisonous snake. Yi-Hai didn't want to get more involved with her, because such a woman's mind is too difficult to guess, and he has too many secrets. He went into deep contact with such a woman full of calculations, and maybe his secrets were exposed and given to himself caused the killing of the body. He is really strong now, but he hasn't reached the point where the world is invincible, so everything is done carefully. Yi-Hai and Natasha took the elevator to the top of Osborne, and once again came to Norman's office. Different from last time, this time Norman was full-faced and very spirited. When he saw Yi-Hai, he greeted him very enthusiastically, and personally gave him a cup of tea instead of coffee, because he knew Yi-Hai liked ancient Eastern China tea. "This is China's finest Longjing tea. Do you taste it? Does it suit your taste?" Norman smiled warmly. Yi-Hai just took a sip and smiled. "Very good, this tea is very authentic, and Mr. Norman knows Chinese tea ceremony." Of course, Chinese civilization is vast and profound, and Chinese tea ceremony contains a lot of philosophical flavor. Seriously, I have been fascinated with this aspect for a while, but I am a scientist and I don't understand philosophy very well. Norman also drinking tea, she looks very familiar with Chinese culture. Yi-Hai's heart is funny. This guy knows the Chinese culture of fart. Just now he made tea using Japanese tea ceremony. Although Japanese tea ceremony originally originated in China, it is not much different from China. Yi-Hai, who has a good history, saw it through at a glance. This guy is so dedicated to himself, he definitely wanted me. Whoever can help Yi-Hai is definitely a genetic problem. Yi Hai laughed. Too much Chinese philosophy is too cluttered. I really don't understand. We are both lay people. Don't talk about these topics. Let's talk about it. Mr. Norman, you find me. What's the matter? Norman smiled embarrassedly, and then entered the official topic. Today, when I came to Dr. Yi, there was something to discuss. What needs my help? Yi Hai looked at Yi Hai in doubt, and Norman's whispered request seemed to be a big problem. Norman stunned and finally said, Drive Yi, now the lizard medicine has made great progress, but the product still has a lot of defects, so, well, I would like to ask Dr. Yi to help improve it and all those side effects improve. Yi Hai's face suddenly darkened, and he shook his head. No, I will not do any more research on animal genes, at least in the past few years. Why? Norman puzzled. Is this difficult? No, it's not a technical issue. Yi Hai shook his head slightly and said, I can improve them in terms of technology, but have the chairman considered the consequences of the improvement? Once the animal fusion gene technology is mature, it will be the emergence of a large number of orcs has brought more contradictions to society, and the problem of mutants is already sharp enough. If the orcs reappear, wouldn't those people be more upsetting? Quote. Norman was slightly displeased, saying, we are a bioengineering company. As long as we improve the technical aspects, we only need to consider, and other aspects should not be considered. Besides, we manufacture lizardmen only to provide to the military, pharmaceuticals. It will not be leaked out. Yi Hai's face was disdainful. Chairman, you are too confident. In some people's eyes, Osborn's protective measures can come and go like their home. Norman is a bit displeased, but what he said is true. The Earth on this world has too many black technologies, and there are many people with special abilities. As long as their research has attracted the interest of these people have absolutely a way to get it. Norman knew this well, but he was still not willing to give up the huge order of the military, but he could not use it. Now Yi Hai's status is equal to him, and the old guys on the board value Yi Hai more. Norman's mind flickered, his eyes flickered, and Shen said, Drive Yi, what conditions do you want to help? Yi Hai was annoyed. This guy was really a naked businessman with a bare personality. When he saw something of interest, he ignored everything. I'm sorry, Mr. Norman. I can't do anything about this. I still have something, so let's go. Yi Hai stood up and walked outside the door. Seeing Yi Hai being so rude, Norman almost fell into the glass, but he was helpless, and his heart flashed a lot of compulsion, forcing Yi Hai to submit, but after some measurement, he felt that it was not feasible. It seems that I have to find another way. Yi Hai is unwilling to find other genetic experts. Well, Dr. Connor is good. Unfortunately, this guy has disappeared since he became a lizard, and was caught. Did the zoo go? Quote. After returning to his office, Yi Hai started the development of vampire medicaments. Recently he has been busy with other things. The development of vampire medicaments has been progressing slowly, and it has been less than a month since the completion of the task. He must complete as soon as possible. If he cannot complete the task within the prescribed time, he will be deducted a large amount of scientific value. At this time an assistant from his laboratory came over. This man was a middle-aged man in his 30s. He had a normal face and an honest look. Jerry, is there anything? Yi Hai asked. Jerry looked anxiously. Head, my wife just called me and said she was injured, so I want to take a vacation home. No problem, you go back first. Yi Hai watched Jerry stepping out of the door in a hurry, but his face sank. With his keen eyes, he saw that this Jerry was lying, and asked, Xuanvi, what has happened to this Jerry recently? Quote. During your visit to the chairman's office, he touched your computer and downloaded a copy of the research materials in it. Zhan Nu said with a cold voice, because the host said that I could not be exposed, I did not stop. Yi Hai suddenly became furious and asked, which research materials have he downloaded? He has downloaded all the research data of the master on the surface system, and he has not found the core data hidden. Yi Hai nodded slightly, which was expected. Jerry is just an ordinary researcher. It is impossible for him to crack the system he set up. It's just that this guy dared to steal. It should have been instructed by outsiders or you were confused. Xuanvi, enter the back door of number 1 satellite, start the satellite monitoring system, and monitor Jerry, this guy. I want to see who he trades with these materials. Yi Hai Shen said. Yes, Master. Jelly walked out of the lab in a mood, always very nervous, afraid that Osborn's security would suddenly come over to catch him. When he kept walking out of Osborn, he was relieved and his face showed with a smile. He muttered to himself, my data should be exchanged for 100,000 US dollars. Well, no, this is Dr. Yi's genetic information, at least sold for 200,000 US dollars. Jerry dialed a phone number. Drive Connor, I have the information. A rough and excited voice came from the other party. Great, see you in our old places. Okay. After hanging up the phone, Jerry rushed to the agreed address, in a remote alley. He waited for a long time before Dr. Connor appeared. Dr. Connor was still the same, with a broken right arm and an old-fashioned trench coat. His hair was disheveled, his eyes sharp, and he came over slowly, a fierce breath coming on his face. Jerry's heart trembled and trembled. Kong. Dr. Connor, hello, I'm glad to see you again, you. I'm also very happy, researcher Jerry. Dr. Connor smiled slightly and said in a hurry, what about those materials? In my hard drive, there is Dr. Yi's latest research on genes. I have seen some, but I can't understand it at all. Jia held a hard drive in his hand and tried his best to praise his goods. Child good price. You don't understand. I really don't understand how Dr. Yi can make you such a stupid person to be his assistant. Dr. Connor mocked, suddenly reaching out with his left hand, snatching the hard drive. Jerry was startled and angrily. Drive Connor, you have to pay first. We said 100,000 US dollars. No, 200,000, I want 200,000. Dr. Connor carefully put the hard disk in his pocket, and suddenly grabbed Jerry's neck, and shouted, bye, idiot, I never thought I would give you money, you can die. Don't, doctor, you still need. I'll provide you with information. Jerry said with a stinging, stuttering head. Dr. Connor mocked. Bye, Kai, you thought that Dr. Yi's ability, he would not find you moved his computer. Bye, Kai, you are useless now, because you can only use it once. Click. Dr. Connor broke Jerry's neck with ease, then threw the body at his disposal, and the body was lying in the corner like garbage. Everything just was filmed by a satellite in the void, and then sent to Yi-Hai's computer through a special signal. It turned out to be Dr. Connor. What did this guy steal my genetic technology for? Yi-Hai frowned slightly. The information was irrelevant to him, but it was very important to Dr. Connor. Although the information is irrelevant, this theft has annoyed Yi-Hai, and Dr. Connor must give a profound lesson, otherwise this guy may have another time. If there is endless theft, how can he study it? After making up his mind, Yi-Hai ran out of the Osborn building, changed the shape in a corner, and then flew directly into the sky. The black figure flew across the blue sky and flew towards a street. A satellite surveillance system instructed Yi-Hai to fly over a street quickly, and then found Dr. Connor's figure among the crowd. He dived down and rushed straight down, and gently grasped Connor with one hand. The doctor flew into the sky. Dr. Connor was startled, roaring, his body quickly swelled, and cracked his clothes. A huge lizard full of green scale armor jumped out, and his sharp claws gripped Yi-Hai's neck fiercely. Yi-Hai gently squeezed his left hand and crushed the claw of the big lizard. The big lizard screamed, the green pupil shrank sharply, and said roughly, "Are you a doctor of science?" This familiar feeling made Dr. Connor quickly recognize the person in front of him. The last time he was easily abused by Yi-Hai on the bridge, he still remembers it, and he was very afraid of Yi-Hai. "Why are you looking for me? We don't have a conflict of interest," Dr. Connor called. "No, you just took my research data. Do you think I should find you?" Yi-Hai looked at the big lizard coldly. Dr. Connor trembled and said, "You are Dr. Yi?" "Yes, that's me. You dare to ask me for trouble, just to die." Yi-Hai flew to a forest, throwing the lizard away. The body of the lizard flew out like a cannonball, and broke more than 10 large trees just stopped. The big lizard stood up with his teeth grinning, and Yi-Hai came to his eyes again, and Dr. Connor quickly called out, "I don't know that you are a doctor of science. Sorry, I will never mess with you in the future." Quote, "You won't have the next time." Yi-Hai stared coldly at the big lizard, considering him. This lizard has a strong recovery ability and is not so easy to kill. Dr. Connor saw the murderous power in Yi-Hai's eyes, and was extremely furious in his heart, but he was extremely frightened. Eventually, Fear occupied the anger. He kneeled and asked, "Drive Yi, please let me go. I want you to stay, it will be useful for my life." Quote. Really? Yi Hai asked scornfully, "What can you do?" "I can help you with research," Dr. Connor said. Yi Hai laughed and interrupted his words with disdain. "Your research ability can't catch up with me. It's not worth mentioning to me. I have already surpassed how much you don't know." "Dr. Connor, did you forget that after you got the big lizard?" Quote. Dr. Connor paused for a moment, but finally said helplessly, "You were right, I am not as good as you in research, but you always need an assistant, and there are some things you cannot do alone. I think you are worthless. I am not interested in treating you as a research material." Yi Hai mocked Dr. Connor with enthusiasm, watching Dr. Connor extremely angry, and suddenly had a note in his heart. Touching his chin he said, "However, you are still a bit useful, such as letting you do unseen things." Dr. Connor said angrily, "I won't do this kind of thing, you might as well kill me." "But you killed one of my assistants just now," Yi Hai said coldly. "You are no longer the former Dr. Connor. Now the lizard gene is constantly affecting your mind, and your brain is full of looting and killing. Slay, you have no control over yourself, you are almost a beast now." Quote. Dr. Connor stared at the huge green eyes and shouted, "The lizard man is the most perfect creature, and human beings are just tapeworms. They constantly destroy the environment and keep satisfying their selfish desires." Bump. Yi Hai ignored his complaints, hit him directly with one punch, and then stepped under him with one foot, coldly. "Reptiles, either help me or die, you choose quickly, I don't have much interest in you waste time." Quote. Facing Yi Hai's powerful force, Dr. Connor immediately compromised and said quickly, Okay, I listen to you, Dr. Yi, what do you want me to do?" "Very good." Yi Hai smiled, "But I'm letting you do something troublesome. You need help now." "Helper? What helper?" Dr. Connor asked. "Your companion, Yi Haidao. Norman has tested lizard potions on humans. He has detained many lizard people in his underground base. He wants to sell them to the military, but the military is not satisfied with these products. I feel that they are all beasts, out of human control, and they will only cause trouble on the battlefield." Quote. "They want to drive us, humans." Dr. Connor yelled angrily, and suddenly realized that the powerful presence in front of him was a human. He immediately shut up and looked at Yi Hai carefully. Yi Hai didn't care, and continued, "Your task now is to rescue your companions from their cages, and then stay in your underground water channel. Don't cause trouble. If you dare to cause trouble, I don't mind destroying you all." Quote. "Okay, Dr. Yi," Dr. Connor asked with a bit of eagerness. "Can you tell me now, where is my companion now?" "It's just below the Osborne Hospital." Yi Hai laughed. "There are a lot of corpses and disabilities in that place. Osborne has been trying to confuse or force these people to do their human test." "Excellent, I'm going to rescue my companion." Dr. Connor smiled grimly. Yi Hai crushed the hard drive in Dr. Connor's pocket and said, "Very well, as long as you do it, I will give you a copy of the research materials as a reward." Dr. Connor was so overjoyed that he immediately went to work. Seeing the big lizard go quickly, Yi Hai's mouth evoked a yin-yin smile. This time he asked Dr. Connor to release those lizard people in order to trouble the Osborne industry. Once the group of lizard people let out because of the beast gene's drive, it will definitely not quiet down and sneak up, and it will definitely cause trouble. At that time, the source of these lizard men will be known, and the Osborne industry will be on the cusp. Even the infamous according to Chinfu, the corresponding Osborne stock will plummet, leaving a mess. Then Yi Hai will find a way to acquire Osborne and reorganize. This is a series of plans he just remembered. He had already planned to be the master, but he never thought of a way. This time when he met the lizard man, he thought of the story in the Ultimate Spider-Man. Lizard men intend. Yi Hai grinned, "Drive lizard, I hope you will not let me down." Yi Hai returned to Osborne to continue his research. He was very busy at night. When he returned home, he turned on the computer and saw a message pop out. It was sent by the female hacker Sky. Recently, Sky has become a female disciple of Yi Hai, often asking him for hacking knowledge. The two of them communicated by electronic mail, and the contents were all a lot of professional knowledge, but this time they were different. Sky came for help times. She wrote in the letter that she found a strange hidden virus in recent days, which is very latent but has infected many computers. She estimates that 40% of the computers in the world have been unknowingly infected. The virus is still spreading. Although this virus hasn't moved yet, its harm is very powerful, because every time she wants to crack it, her hard disk will be burned in a few minutes. In the end, Sky wrote, "This is made by a powerful hacker master, and it is made by the rival blood you have been tracking, because the name of the virus is Blood Virus." Blood God Virus. That blood made it. Yi-Hai became interested. He quickly checked his computer and found that his computer was not infected with the virus. He wanted to believe that the firewall made by himself was too powerful and the virus was not capable of breaking through. Yi-Haley immediately hacked into the server of a large website. It took a few minutes to find the hidden virus, and then copied it to his computer. He used a tool to analyze the virus, and after a few minutes, he showed a surprised look. "This blood has such a strong hacking ability, I am afraid no one on the planet can solve this virus in a short time, even it also takes me hours to crack." Quote, "For him, a virus takes several hours, and it is already a very powerful virus." According to his estimation, the virus has exceeded this era for at least 10 years. It can be expected that once a virus breaks out, there will be a disaster on the Earth's network, and many companies and corporate databases will be lost and the losses will be heavy. "How else did I want to make money? I didn't expect that the blood you gave me a good opportunity to make money." He already had a whole set of methods for acquiring Osborne Industries, but an important difficulty was in front of him: he had no money. He should now say that he is very wealthy, and the bank deposits have already reached tens of millions of dollars, but it is a joke to buy Osborne by relying on such money. No less than $100 billion. Where did Yi-Hai go for $100 billion? He has superb hacking skills and can invade banks or other rich network groups without traces, but he will not do so. In addition to this is his bottom line: there is a layer of concern, that is, the Earth of this world there are too many fierce men. If he commits crimes, many people will not be able to find out the horror, not to mention others, at least Professor X, of the Mutant College can quickly find out. He also wanted to get the ability of Professor X, and he didn't want to disappoint the professor. In short, there are many reasons why he cannot do these lawless things. Cracking the blood virus was very smooth. It only took him more than 2 hours to complete. Then he created a special killing tool for the blood virus and sent it to Sky. A few minutes later, Sky's message came over, and she excitedly said, "Teacher, you are so awesome. You took only a few hours to solve it. Oh my God, it took me a few days. Without a clue. How long does your brain grow? Aren't you Earth people, or alien black technology?" Quote, "You want to know if I'm an alien? We don't know if we see an address below." Yi-Hai laughed. Sky exclaimed excitedly, "Teacher, you are finally willing to meet me. Listening to your voice is very young. Teacher, are you a handsome guy?" "Of course, I'm very handsome. You can't help but give it away." Yi-Hai grinned. "But are you beautiful?" "Of course I'm a beauty, and the men who are pursuing me will soon have a group." Sky grinned. "Then I can rest assured that the disciples I teach must always be pleasing to the eye." In fact, Yi-Hai had already invaded Sky's computer. She had a self-photograph in her computer. This girl was indeed a big beauty like she said, and she was also a Chinese woman like him. Mixed-race children have both the tall white figure and the feminine appearance of the Orientals. This is why Yi-Hai is willing to accept this apprentice. After the two agreed on the address, they met in a cafe tomorrow. At noon the next day, Yi-Hai came to the same coffee shop, and after sitting there for a short time, a young woman walked in. This girl's black and beautiful hair is scattered on the shoulder like a waterfall, white, tender skin, crystal black eyes are completely the face of an Oriental person, but her figure is very peerless. He's tall, handsome, beautiful, bumpy, and very expected, exuding a fascinating charm. The charm is natural, and the charm is peerless. This girl raises her hands to cast a foot in the wind. When she walked in, most of the men in the coffee shop were attracted to her. Yi-Hai was attracted to her, and then she waved to her. This girl is his apprentice Sky. Her appearance is much more beautiful than the self-portrait in the photo, and a determined person like Yi-Hai has been stunned for a few seconds. But this time she did not come alone, but she brought a middle-aged man with her. The middle-aged man was dressed in a suit and leather shoes. He was very stylish and looked like a successful person. When Sky saw Yi-Hai's handsome appearance, He felt secretly rejoiced, but raised a resentment, because this time Yi-hai asked her out not to soak her, mainly for the middle-aged man beside her. Yi-hai asked her to meet to talk about life. Sky is very famous in the hacker community. Hackers and network security companies are actually in the same vein. Of course, she also knows many senior executives of network security companies, and she works in a network security company. The man, Benjamin Marcus, is the boss of a cybersecurity company. He recently needed money and wanted to sell his company. Sky pretended to be familiar with Yi-hai, pointing to Benjamin Marcus. This is Benjamin, the boss of Marcus Cybersecurity. I said to you Marcus, Mr. Marcus, this is what I said to you, Mr. Yi-hai, he is thinking about buying a cybersecurity company. After shaking hands, the two talked to each other and went to the topic. Mr. Yi, my company is not big, but we have been operating in this area for more than 10 years, and we have many familiar old customers. These are our resources and costs. Yi-hai waved his hand. I'm not very interested in these things, I'm interested in your company's talents and sales capabilities. Benjamin was embarrassed for a while. If his company has top talents and sales capabilities, it will not be done for more than 10 years, or it is a half-dead look. Of course, it does not mean that they are incapable. They are being pushed out by other large companies. It is also a big reason. Yi-hai smiled. It seems that you lack talents in network security, but it doesn't matter. The addition of me and my apprentice Sky will make up for this flaw. What, Miss Sky is your apprentice? Benjamin was taken aback. No one knows Sky's hacking skills, but her network security technology is top-notch in their industry. Now she is working as a technical director in a large company. Such a good position and future should join him. This little company is up. Sky laughed. Mr. Yi is indeed my teacher. His network security technology is hundreds of times denser than mine. I have learned many problems and technologies from him. Benjamin looked at the two young people, and some were lonely. Both are so young and so capable, but I am already old, and I have reached the end of this industry. Yi-hai and Sky smiled at each other, and Sky smiled. Bangming, I think my teacher asked you to come out. It won't be as simple as buying your company. If it's just buying, he can just call him. Hands down. Quote. Oh, Benjamin had some expectations in his eyes and asked, Mr. Yi, what else do I need to help? Yi-hai smiled. Mr. Marcus, your company is doing well, but it has been strong in the network security industry that has been under great competitive pressure for so many years. It can be seen that your talents are also very good, so I think I will take after the acquisition. You are still hired as the company's general manager, and my apprentice Miss Sky as the technical director. Quote. Benjamin asked incredulously, Miss Sky, will you really come to our company? Of course, my teacher invited me. Why wouldn't I come? I still need to learn technology from him. Sky smiled. Great, Mr. Yi, rest assured, with Miss Sky joining, I am confident of making our company bigger. Benjamin is very happy, but there is a lot of meaning in his eyes. He can basically guess the identity of his new boss. He has heard of the technical masters in the network security industry, but he has never heard of Yi-hai. And to be able to worship a character like Sky, that can only be another identity, that is, Yi-hai is a hidden top hacker. As for which grade he is, he does not know, and he will not peep into the secrets of others. He will rot in everything he sees and hears today. Next two people talked about the acquisition in detail. After about half an hour, Yi-hai acquired Benjamin's company for $30 million. Benjamin served as general manager, accounting for 5% of the shares. Kay served as the technical director, accounting for 5% of the shares, and Yi-hai was the company's president, accounting for 90% of the shares. After the negotiation, the two came to Benjamin's company, called a lawyer together, and signed a contract. Benjamin is very satisfied with the transaction. He has received the money he needs and can continue to do the work he loves. In this regard, he is very grateful to Yi-hai for his generosity, and grateful to Yi-hai. Jiangxi K pulled over. In the conference room, several people talked about future plans, and soon Benjamin was shocked by a news. What, now 70% of the world's computers have been infected with the blood virus? Benjamin cried unbelievably. This is impossible, haven't those big companies found it? Except for the company where I work, which is cracking overtime. Other companies have not heard of such actions. Sky said. Her company's crackdown was definitely the reason, Sky reported. The next day, Benjamin announced that the company changed hands. The new boss was Yi Hai. Yi Hai did not make any changes to the Internal Affairs Department or issue any new policies. Instead, he changed the company name to Yi Hai Cybersecurity, and I yearn to announce a message. 85% of the computers in the world have been infected with a virus called Blood God, which is very destructive. It can shatter all the data on the hard disk in 1 or 2 minutes and burn down the hardware. This news was posted on a professional network security website, but it didn't attract much attention, and it was just a mockery. Still others yelled at scammers because Yi Hai uploaded a special killing tool to remove the virus, but he needed to pay $80. This price is not high or low, but if you have a large number, you will earn a lot of money. This content was linked to the online mall, but on the first day, no one was trading. 4, 3, 7, but many people left comments in the comments, all of which were swear words. What kind of bird is this? It's a lie. I have checked more than 10 computers and found no viruses at all. This guy is a prank. The blood has so many horrors of the blood virus that it is so horrible that I scarcely bought it. Fortunately, after reading the reviews, I realized that this was a liar. It's an exaggeration. 85% of the world's computers are infected. How is that possible? Yi Hai Company instantly became a joke in the industry, but it has a lot of fame, but it is a notoriety. The general manager Ban Jae-ming is worried that Yi Hai is wrong. So many people in the industry say that there is no such virus. He can't help worrying about whether his new boss is wrong. If it's really wrong, his company it really became a joke. But it didn't take long for him to turn into ecstasy. The following morning, YouTube, a huge video site in the United States, broadcast an announcement from Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. The Al-Qaeda leader had a big beard and set up a humble camera. He said in crappy English with a speech, "Hello everyone, my name is Ben Ram and I am the person in charge of our base. Today we invite American journalists to witness here. We are about to announce to our friends all over the world the latest product developed by our base, which is the blood virus. The blood virus has extremely powerful stealth and destructiveness. You haven't noticed it yet. In fact, your computer is infected with the virus. Now we calculate that 95% of the computers in the world have already infected the blood virus. You confess to God, and remorse your sins. At 12 noon today, we will turn on the blood virus in the name of God, and then you pagans will lead to God's punishment." Ha ha. Quote. The people who saw this video were stunned. The first reaction was that someone was playing a prank. When did the savages in Afghanistan have such powerful computer programming capabilities? They dared to threaten that the viruses they created have infected 95% of the world's computers already. No one in Europe or the United States with the most powerful computer dares to say so. Why do these savages dare to speak wildly? Is it April Fool's Day today? After confirming that it was not April Fool's Day and YouTube denied it was a prank, the Americans still did not believe it. They still thought that these Afghan savages were too boring and whimsical. At this time, the famous American network security company Big Red had announced to the public that they had discovered the virus a few days ago, but just felt that the virus was not very destructive except for its hidden nature, so it was not announced to the public. However, this time the maker of the virus announced that it is very destructive, and there is nothing wrong with it. I call on everyone to temporarily turn off the computer and wait until the antivirus software is developed. At this moment, the entire United States is boiling, and everyone is panicking and flocks to the famous network security websites in the United States, but these companies are powerless, saying that it is too short in time, they can't crack the virus, and everyone is patient waiting for them to develop antivirus tools. Now all the security software of the security company has been updated. As soon as the internet users start up, a pop-up window will pop up, saying that the machine has been infected with the blood virus. Netizens couldn't help crying and laughing. When was the powerful United States bullied by a group of small Middle Eastern nations, and even a small virus on the other side could not be solved? When they were bothering, some people finally remembered that a small company said that they had developed a blood special killer virus. With the idea of trying it, they bought this special killer software, and they were pleasantly surprised that this small the software turned out to be so effective that it quickly cleared this supposedly very difficult virus. The news spread 10, and hundreds, and it spread quickly. After a large number of people found that the killer software was effective, all news sites and forums uploaded the killer software. Link. Master. Now more than 1 million people have purchased special killing software, and accounted for more than $100 million. Zon Nu reported to Yihai. Unfortunately, the time is too short. There is only one day. It is estimated that the maximum number of people who will buy our software is tens of millions. Yihai said with some pity. Master, need Zon Nu to exaggerate propaganda. Zon Nu suggested. Okay, that's all I can do now. Zon Nu is a supercomputer, and its advanced level is the highest in the world. After Yihai's improvement and perfection, Zon Nu has an IQ that is not inferior to others, and has a strong ability to act. With her joining, after half an hour, major websites around the world have introduced the introduction of the blood special killing software. The number of purchases has increased significantly. Because the number of people rose sharply, the online shop almost crashed. Fortunately, Yihai distributed antivirus tools to the major online shopping and retail platforms in the world, and the traffic was diverted. This did not happen. A few hours later, Zon Nu said, the number of purchases by the owner has increased to more than 50 million, and the account has nearly $4 billion. In the sky, flying carriers. Agent Jesse Wells is frantically playing computer games in the room. A colleague walked in and laughed. Jesse, today's blood god is nearing the end of the day, don't you turn off the computer? Or have you bought antivirus software? Quote. Jesse haha laughed. You also believe this, don't say if those Afghan savages can develop it, even if they can develop it, this virus can pass through our shield firewall. Colleagues nodded. Of course not, our shield defense system is one of the best in the world, and no one can break through it. Suddenly I thought about the video of the director and lover that was a month ago. I couldn't say any more. It seemed that my shield defense system was not as invincible as I said. Jesse scorned. And what other antivirus software? If the blood virus is really so powerful, they can also rely on a non-governmental organization to do it. Beep. Suddenly his computer screen was blank, and smelled a burnt smell in his nose. Jesse was startled, checked the case, and screamed, my God, it turns out to be true, this virus really burns the hardware. My information, my big movie. Quote. This kind of farce is happening all over the world. The reason is that these people do not believe that there is any blood virus, or that the killing tool made by Yihai is useful, or they don't even know what happened recently. Destroyed a machine in vain. With this painful lesson, rumors of the blood virus spread all over the world at once. Whatever it says, what punishment of God, the end of the world is here, the aliens have invaded, and it's more reliable that terrorists will attack already. With the outbreak of the blood virus, net names naturally expect antivirus software to work, but the major network security companies are still powerless, which highlights the powerful killing software developed by Yihai. But within a few days, Yihai Network Security, the company, has become a top cybersecurity company throughout the world. Various general recruiters, software translators, product promotion, and other things naturally have General Manager Ben Jaming. Yihai has let him do it. He only cares about how much money he has made in recent days. 3 days later, Yihai developed the vampire potion, stretched her body, and asked, Shuanvi, how many people now buy my antivirus software and how much do they make? The number of purchases has soared in the past 3 days, reaching more than 800 million people and accounting for more than $70 billion. Yihai was taken aback. He was really taken aback by the amount of money. He asked, why are there so many people buying it? There are indeed billions of internet users around the world, but online shopping sites everywhere, not so many people, right? Quote. That's it. After S.H.I.E.L.D. found out that the software was developed by the owner, they asked the US government to adjust the method of selling online shopping sites and added a lot of platforms to our antivirus software. There will be no bloatedness, so the software, there was no network congestion in the big purchase, and more than 600 million pieces of software were sold in 3 days. Quote. Yihai nodded and said, since the S.H.I.E.L.D. is operating behind the scenes, wouldn't I want to come to those companies who jumped the clowns? Well, I owe S.H.I.E.L.D. a favor too, and I will not ask them for anything later. Sorry to refuse, it is really bad debts. Quote. Yi-hai stood up, drank a cup of tea, took a few sips slowly, and said, Shuanvi, the Dr. Connor I asked you to follow, has there been any movement lately? Drive Connor had attacked the basement of Osborne Hospital late last night and rescued his people. Oh, Yi-hai smiled. How many lizard men did he rescue? And where are they hiding now? There are 13 lizards in total. Now they are all hidden in the sewer. The sewer satellite system cannot detect them, and Zonu cannot detect their specific range. Are these guys as safe as I said? It doesn't seem to be. Today, 3 of them lingered outside the Osborne Industrial Building for more than 3 hours. It seems to be bad for Osborne Industry. Well, Yi-hai was slightly angry, and said, Drive Unicom Connor. Yes, soon the other party was connected. Yi-hai said coldly, Drive Connor, what are your men going to do when I run downstairs? Do you want to engage in any terrorist activities? Dr. Connor was taken aback, surprised. I didn't let them do this, it seems these guys are messing up again. Yi-hai sneered. Drive Connor, you'd better be honest. If you discover that you have acted against me, I will immediately make you lizards disappear from this world. You know, I have this ability. Quote. Dr. Connor said quickly. No, I know. Drive Connor, you remember to me, I am monitoring you at all times, and I know everything you do, so please be calm and stay in the sewer and obey my instructions. Are you clear? Quote. I know. After hanging up the phone, Dr. Connor grabbed the mobile phone in his hand and shouted, Jeff, who asked you to go to the Osborne building, do you want to find death? Do you know if you do this, you will cause trouble? Quote. Jeff is the strongest of the lizards, but he has no left leg in the shape of a human, so he always likes to use the lizard form. This will hear Dr. Connor's roar, and his eyes will suddenly burst into flames. Shoot, the body flashes when he reached Dr. Connor, he grabbed his neck and lifted him. Jeff yelled at Dr. Connor. Drive Connor, the pain of a scientist like you who has not tried to make a test product. You can't imagine how dark we are living underground at Osborne Hospital, that kind of pain and humiliation we can't just let it go. Quote. Dr. Connor had a bad feeling and asked, what do you want to do? We just want to have grudges, blood debts and blood rewards. Jeff said coldly. Dr. Connor was startled and blurted out, do you want to catch Norman? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.